two. Hello and welcome to Spotlight, the official podcast of Grapple. I'm Benno.
And I'm JP.
And we are back for another Spotlight, JP. Just the two of us this week, like old times. Plenty to talk about on this Tuesday Spotlight and our new slot. We've got all kinds of stuff. Brand new wrestling promotion kicking things off on Saturday night prime time in the UK to talk about. But yeah, Gladiators, some top heels in that, and enough about Clattenburg. Got a bit of WWE to talk, bit of TNA to talk, bit of AW to talk, bit of New Japan to talk. Shitloads to talk today. But how are we? How's it going?
We're good. Not as cold as what I imagine you are, because it's apparently snowing it where you are. Instead, it's just bloody cold, which makes the whole thing a bit more miserable down here. Apparently too cold to snow, I'm being told for that. But it certainly isn't where you are, where you'd like to think you'd end up work being called off. But so here's how. But otherwise all good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, we missed you the weekend. Didn't have you on the Brock Lesnar show on Sunday. I trust you've done your homework and got the Brock Ric Flair match watch now, the Brock Hogan match watch. Got it all in.
For shame, I haven't actually. I feel bad. There was lots of other stuff I have to cram in. I'm halfway through the show at the moment. Can I just say it's brilliant? I do know, unfortunately, the twist, which is the age game that's being played, and I got through the first couple of rounds of those where it's just like Jesus Christ. But I think it's when we get to the I don't even know if I want to say their name, but the Undertaker's age. Like, I'm just like kind of looking forward to hearing about that bit. But it is absolutely brilliant, and just a brilliant show and a brilliant pick from King of the Mountain, Chris Platt. Just like fucking great choice.
Great trip down memory lane back to when SmackDown was good, and we can say that because it was more than 20 years ago, so we're allowed to say that. Raw, not so much, but yeah, like going through that whole period really, where, like I say, but we talk about Brock being the wrestling equivalent of Wayne Rooney, which I think he very much was, as far as like that young wrestler that you constantly heard about. So his equivalent of Wayne Rooney, in the words of one of my mates in the schoolyard telling me he'd scored from Everton's old penalty box, was like, "Oh, you won't believe it, this bloke in OVW, and he does like shooting star presses, and he's 8 foot tall, and he's 500 pounds and built like a bodybuilder." I mean, obviously you have to pull that down a little bit for exaggeration, but very similar story really to what I constantly heard about our Wayne. So always an exciting one to go back to and revisit in the kind of dead spot where it was like, Attitude Era's gone, but we got a whole new generation. We talked as well. You'll enjoy John Cena and Randy Orton's additions to that one as well. Mop top Randy Orton and doing high flying lucha offense. You'll get Garrett's breakdown of that on there as well. And young John Cena getting launched out of Royal Rumbles. It was all there, and it seems the feedback's been really good for it as well.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I think just recording about Brock generally seems to make people happier. And it's even more astonishing for the fact that Gareth, for a lot of this was first time viewing for him, because it hit that dead spot, as many of us have, where you just sort of think, I'm just stopping watching wrestling. I'm not going to see it for a bit, which I don't know if you and I ever actually really went through. But he had that period and he was like away traveling, and it coincides with this kind of era. So hearing his reaction to a lot of the stuff first time round, but like brilliant. And I can remember being as excited as he was when he came out, and you just knew there was a shooting star press. You knew it was there, and it was completely glorious. And how that didn't end up delivering, but anyway, that's another story for another time. But a brilliant show. I'm looking forward to listening to the rest of it this week as well. So that's on the Patreon.
We got a
Scrapple.
Just finalised, didn't we, on the pre-show? What's going up on the Patreon this weekend?
Yes.
Is the poll up, JP, as I speak? We've got a few fun options for the Royal Rumble flashback show. We learned our lesson from the Survivor Series show. We're going to do it the week before the Rumble, so it'll be out this weekend, as everyone, of course, has Royal Rumble fever and gets excited over whether Drew McIntyre is going to throw CM Punk over the top rope. But we just curated a great selection, and we did skip over the obvious one. We're just not doing the 1992 Rumble. We've just decided it's been done. It's been overdone. We'd all like to review it, maybe in like another 5 years or something like that. Maybe you can, we can say that it's allowed again at that point. But yeah, we've gone with some not deep cuts, but like some slightly more interesting choices from Rumble's past.
Oh, we have for this, and I'm literally just putting it up at the moment as we speak. So we're going to be getting some a few in here probably in the next few seconds, just to give us an idea. It's like it's almost like a poll like that we're getting on here. So it's like that 10 o'clock feeling. But the choices we have, go through them very, very quickly. Royal Rumble 90, we got 99, we have 2000, 2001, 2007, and one that's a bit more up to date, as you mentioned on the pre-show, only nearly 10 years ago now, 2014. Which is just
that's current to us now, more than a decade ago.
If you can explain what happens in all of this time, and it's just like, yeah, you'll all be watching New Japan, and then there's another company that comes up with the son of a billionaire who fucking reads the Wrestling Observer. You'd be like, just absolutely fucking wild shit. So yeah, really looking forward to that now. Seeing what votes we have in there at the moment. My God, it's already kicking off on it, and the early leader is Royal Rumble 2001 going in there. That's very much like the IWC.
Feels like Grand National commentary. This and now they're coming up the rear. It's
Royal Rumble 2001 leading there, but we've got 2099 in there as well. With, of course, we have the Vic McMahon, Steve Austin trainers there as well. One for the nostalgia fans. 1990 doing very well up in there as well, but 2007 well back in there. As we get to the young Royal Rumble favorite, 2014 in second place. Yeah, so I don't know if that was as good as racing commentary as I'll ever be able to do. So yeah. That's on the page. That's on the Patreon if you want to go there as well. And as we were also talking about this, we've got some other brilliant things that are coming up in the meantime. We've got like a new episode of Bretro. We have Time coming out as well. So and we're going to have that show out by the end of the weekend. So really looking forward to that one as well. It's Rumble season, mate. How can't we be excited?
There we go. Vote for 2007. Ewan says that is that's my vote. I'll be chalking my one in there for that one as well. But yeah, people's poll will
bloody tightened up in the meantime. Oof.
Oh, okay.
Well, we've got it's all there. It feels like it's all neck and neck at the minute as we're going in. Sort of about 5 minutes into this, 5 minutes into the main show as well. So it's lively, and there's only one way to join in this horse race, and that's to go to patreon.com/grapple. There you go. What a plug.
Oh. Maybe we'll call her a winner by the end of this show, and we'll know exactly where we land with that. And before we get into the wrestling stuff, JP, I suppose saying that to get into the wrestling stuff, we should get going with all the stuff we got to talk about this week. And I felt like we couldn't start it anywhere other than, and it's the thing that just almost broke my my laptop there as I loaded the I tried to kayfabe my browser crashing there. I couldn't see or hear anything. It was the Daily Mail website. I don't know why I chose the Daily Mail link of all things to bring this news story in. JP, if you can get it up, go for it. But of course, wrestling has returned to Saturday nights on ITV, or at least an approximation of wrestling has returned to ITV on Saturday night, because as we talked about last week, Gladiators is back, JP, and it took the world by storm. What's it doing? 6.4 million viewers for the first episodes. Yeah. We don't have the demos or the quarter hours, I don't think, mate. But I think that shit's on ITV. I know ITV World of Sports first episode did particularly well, but shit's on that, doesn't it? We're back. Just shows the formula works. Muscle bound characters, and men of the people going up against them. Same kind of setup. Couple of heels, couple of baby faces. Still works. Formula still cracking it. 2023, 24.
The formula definitely works for this one, and actually sharing the screen for video viewers on this feels like it nearly broke my browser as well. At the same time as well. It's not just you. It's just this godforsaken Daily Mail website, which, it teaches me a lesson for going there in the first place. But yeah, it's kind of insane, actually, in terms of how well that it's done.
Simon says here, by the way, it's on the BBC. So obviously, I went to a friend's house and watched this. My friend's name is IPT. Anyway, VPN. Anyway, yeah, seen it. It is on the iPlayer, in fact. That is true.
Very much on the. It's all over the iPlayer, mate. I watched it and made sure we paused it, and then we watched it in classic Saturday night style as well. And to be honest, it was a lot of fun. And I have to say, like that rating, 6.4 million by comparison with other kind of big shows, like for this era, that's a massive number. That's like a really big fucking number. And yeah, they kept the format simple. They didn't fuck about with it. They didn't introduce too many games. I enjoyed it for what it was. I like that behind the scenes stuff. I thought that was an interesting one. Your man Finley got on my nerves. I won't lie.
I liked him. I think he's a good babyface. I liked him. It's like I know there was lessons to be learned from Alfie or
faking that injury, mate. Right. I mean, good cell job on the knee, wasn't it, as well? But like, which he clearly did as well to fake out the other bloke, who was shit at duel, I might add. But then he was up against a man literally called Giant, who you just thought it should be Rob Terry. Well, he's 6'5". By wrestling standards, we'd think fuck all. But I just thought, well, if Andy Q could get his hands on him, and you think he's your henchman to a newly turned Ricky Knight Jr., you think, fucking hell, there's money in that there, isn't there? But I don't know. What did you think? You managed to squeeze it in just before recording, didn't you?
I honestly, I like you say that about Finley, like Simon mentioned it there, like getting himself over with a knee injury. It was more wrestling than wrestling. I felt there were lessons like wrestling people should absolutely learn from this. It was like what I liked about him as like the top babyface on the show was like he was just like, yeah, like I say, he was your Alfie odd job. Every man who's, he's a little bit undersized and he's just he's a bit northern. He's a bit like, oh, I'm a bit like, oh, I don't know what I'm gonna do when I get in like in front of like the bright lights type of character that everyone can imagine themselves being. Like I say, he took the shot to the knee and sold that throughout the show. Like honestly, like it made me think like the amount of like British promotions who were like, no, what we got to do is got to have our own Stone Cold or The Rock, or we got to have our own Kenny Omega. We got to do things in an American wrestling kind of style. I think what the British audience wants is somebody like him, but it's an underdog babyface who's just a bit of an everyman and is like, not your superstar bodybuilder type. I thought he was great. So it was even at the end as well with winning it and like doing the whole being the get clapping along for the other bloke to help him finish the Travelator and stuff like that. Babyface stuff. It all just made me think there must be some wrestling person who's working there because like from the outfits, including like the knee pads and kick pads that they had when they were doing one of the things, like the full-on singlets, the characters, the stuff like that. I would bet like there's got to be like some of the production staff of ITV World of Sports knocking around who are maybe giving a few hints and tips of how to get some baby faces over. Were the works on the original Gladiators, or was I just too young to realize, JP? Because there were definitely, like say, the injuries and a couple of the other things that happened. Though the fake Wolfman, that's the one in there getting onto Viper getting onto the platform when he shouldn't have, things like that. Like I felt like that definitely felt a little bit pre-planned, and I was thinking, are they just doing that for this, or did they always do things like that? And like 8-year-old Benno just fell for it when it was on ITV in the 90s. Like I don't know if they were new editions or not, but all works the new way.
It is, and it worked. Look on here, because then Finley afterwards, he's limping, as he says on here, according to the Daily Mail. Twisted my knee down there, so I don't know. I felt something go, but this is not the end. This won't be the last time you see me. I'm going in the back and recover, and we'll see what else I can give. This is not the last from me. Not a chance, not a prayer. What
a babyface! What a promo!
That's pure babyface for that as well. He just he was a little bit too precocious for my taste, and I kind of like the other bloke as much as anything else. I'm not convinced by Viper as a heel necessarily. He felt like kind of like very much like he's just a poor man's wolf, really. Whereas the man Legend, he kind of got the idea of what being basically the anti-Saracen, wasn't he? He was just going to be. He was just like him changed rounds, wasn't he? Like the kind of.
You better watch out with that camera backstage. They're going to catch him shitting in someone's bag at some point. He very much felt like a legend killer, not a legend. Should have called him Viper. I didn't like the he dropped character though, because like the stupid line about taking the leg end off a legend or something like that. Like he started laughing and ended up giving her up that it was a funny line from Bradley Walsh, which was like, "Come on, mate, keep kayfabe, keep your character." Speaking of which, by the way, as the chat is going ham about Barney Walsh, yes, I would 100% just fucking blood, perfect, like just the trope, the wrestling trope
Like
of
a
getting
Von Eric Dallas.
One Eric and Dallas, or getting like
Fucking
Dustin Rhodes
Opa.
natural, or like there are many wrestling equivalents of shit sons getting involved. JP specifically in WCW. That we can name. He fucking stunk. He was awful, and it was just weird. Like the dad and lad combo where they're like, in a job like that, when it's not, like I say, Eureka and Fash, it's a bit of flirting going on, bit of back and forth. When it's dad and lad, it just feels wrong. It's like, why are they all touching up against each other and stuff and have a little laughy banter? It's like, oh, just stop. It's awful.
Yeah, he's not got it yet. Now, we could be talking about him in 2055 when he's hosting this by himself about what the great Barney Walsh era of Gladiators. At the minute, though, he's not there at all. And in some ways, I'm keeping thinking, is he going to end up turning on his dad? If you're going pure wrestling, that's what you do at the end of the season. Is you have a bit of a backstage fight, and you find out that Barney Walsh is actually behind it, and he's the one who's kind of doing that as well. And he attacks beloved Bradley Walsh as well. So I say this to someone I'm a big fan of the Chase. So he is slick as fuck. Bradley Walsh as well.
He's coming and going, I'll come work for your territory, but you got to book my son, like Ray and Dom in it. That's another one. Or Eric, the best one, Erik Watts. That's who he is. He's fucking Erik.
Yeah.
Just like, go on, give me lad a go. I'll do it. I'll take the pay cut if you let him have a little go in the ring.
Does that mean if Barney Walsh ends up hosting a much lesser show on Challenge TV, that we'll think of it as like his TNA run and go, well, maybe there's some bright spots in there? And maybe he'll get over.
He got on TV too young, Nick Wayne style. It was like, maybe they should have gave it a few years, put him in developmental. Yeah, maybe there's something to that. But genuinely, like, I was proper captivated. Like, the whole, like, I remember as a kid now, it brought back memories. When they do like the sob story of all the contestants, that bit bores me to tears. Like, I was literally fast forwarding that on the not on the iPlayer, whatever I was watching it. But like, as a kid, I used to feel the same way. But you need that for like prime time Saturday, X Factor sob story. That there's your kind of your backstory and your motivation. That fits in perfectly. Great for nostalgia, all the same old 90s music, Queen and stuff like that. I was happy to use the same intro theme that we did for the podcast last week as well. Like, it was proper. Like, they couldn't have done a better job. Erik Walsh thing, and that might be the title of the podcast now. Thank you, Liam. Just honestly, they did so well.
It was, and I think this is like on the kind of serious perspective of it. I didn't know if I'd enjoy it as much for what it is, but again, it got the idea of not like you update it obviously with the people necessarily who want it, but at the same time you don't break what isn't broken and what people want, and it gave them exactly what they want. Whether it's them all doing that same thing along to Another One Bites the Dust, like it had all of that kind of. It felt very, very world of sport. And in fact, Gladiators is really the show that when they had the celebrity wrestling on ITV with Joey Legend in there as well, that's really what they ended up making was Gladiators, as much as any, except they just literally had wrestlers on there. But if you are a wrestling promoter at this stage, like, I don't know how much, because there's a load of these Gladiators on it, even the fucking cheapy ones, you get them on board, get them in there.
Get them
to be enforcers. One spot.
Yeah. Totally, like Quertiel on YouTube here telling us that Legend does fitness stuff on YouTube himself. Apparently his name's Matt Does Fitness. So yeah, there you go. You can watch him. I just loved it. Honestly, it was like a lot. It was like they're the types, like, even as hokey as the characters were. Yeah, they're probably the characters that like make sense with like a British family Saturday night TV audience. Probably should be more of those types of characters on like British shows and stuff. It felt very, it did feel a little bit All-Star, felt a little bit Mega Slam, felt a little bit NJPW in the way like the types of guys they used. Could definitely see it there. Let's hope Alex Shane isn't involved. That'll be the next thing to come out. But as with everything, we can't have anything good without Alex Shane getting involved in the production somewhere. Let's hope that doesn't turn out to be true. But yeah, it was massively positive on it and all the characters and stuff. Great.
I mean, ITV fucks up. I don't know if it's like it's not a game changer necessarily for BBC ITV, but ITV did fuck up somehow letting the rights to that go. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Men Behaving Badly did the same thing. That started on ITV and ended up on BBC, and it never was explained how that. You didn't think those kind of transfers happened. You didn't think it was like Flair turning up in WWF in '91, really, isn't it? I don't know if this is going to have that kind of long-term effect where all of a sudden you're converted to the BBC and go, well, you know, if like you and I know Andy Quilton, Rev Pro promoter, was watching it as well. Like, if you know, thinking to yourself, yeah, you're actually finally justifying BC, which I'm not going to get into that argument again, like part 457 about it, but like it's the kind of stuff where it fulfills that entertainment remit of it, and it was a very easy watch. I didn't get a chance. I wasn't watching it with the lads necessarily, but I can't see a world where they wouldn't want to be enjoying that as well. And it's ironic because I won't get to see it this week, because I am going to probably end up going to a family wrestling show at Oxford Academy that inexplicably is the stars of Dragon Gate and Brian Kendrick on there and Ho Ho Lun. So
any Richard Holiday?
Oh, fucking! I wish if he turned up like in some sort of guest appearance.
He's doing
oh, yeah, it's the Swindon lads. That's who we're getting there for this. Is we're getting the good old it's the lot who I went to see with Joe before, who has expressed an interest in going, but I'm also making a day of it by going to see Oxford United as well at the same time. So yeah, you're going to get an extra report on next week's Spotlight on how that comes across.
This is what they need to capitalize on. I want to see like a Gladiators live tour up and down the country. I want to see Jeff Jarrett get involved with it. What I mainly want to see is, like I said last week, like Ninja Warrior UK. I want a real life travelator to turn up somewhere where I can do it. I will train for 6 months, JP, just to do that last bit. Like all of like. Anytime I used to watch Gladiators as a kid, that was the bit I wanted to do. Never mind like the bits where they're fighting the Gladiators and then, you know, they get 2-second head start or something like that by the end of it, which all usually seems a bit pointless by the time you get there. It's the swinging on the rope through the paper at the end with the Gladiators logo on it. It's going up that travelator. It's all of that. Need to do that at some point in my life. So I'll be in training now, JP, until the open a Gladiators Park somewhere in the UK, and then I'll be there. But yeah, merch opportunities, all kinds. Sell some foam fingers. There's money in it, lads. Just speak to the right Brit-Res people, not the wrong Brit-Res people. Ewan says, just go to the shopping centre to go up the escalators. Probably did that a few times as a kid, to be fair, and as an adult. Maybe that can be, the next Christmas night out, Simon says. We could do it. We could all run the course, maybe. But yeah, I'll end up watching it again next week. So yeah, definitely wanted to reference it there. Like I say, 6.4 million viewers. Nothing to sniff at. Let's hope it doesn't follow that ITV World of Sport pattern and crumble from like, you know, the 2 million odd to the whatever it ended up being at the very end with ITV World of Sport. I think these lads have got it in them. They'll hold their audience, JP. Stars, proper stuff.
It's like Punk in WWE. It might be sanitized, but at the same time, they're going to know how to merchandise the fuck out of this and not get it wrong. I don't think this is going away. I don't think it's going to do badly at all. And I think there's a load of people who are going to be into it as well. So depending on your point of view, like those dads who like to watch Strictly because it's kind of like vaguely saucy, like Gladiators will also be very much tapping into that market as well. Looking at you.
If you don't know what we're talking about, apologies to the Americans. It's just American Gladiators, but we call it Gladiators. Yeah, it's not American. So anyway, watch it if you can. iPlayer or where I maybe watched it too. But on that note, while we're talking TV stuff, JP, we've got a lot of different wrestling companies to get through. We've got so I'll maybe talk this first. Speaking of TV, the Vince McMahon Netflix story. Don't know if you got any thoughts or expectations on this as we switch over to Wrestling Matters? Dave Meltzer did kind of say this week, gave the game away a little bit about this Netflix documentary, and it's a documentary series as well. I heard John Pollock and Waiting talking about, which again gave me a little bit of extra hope. Meltzer said he'd gone to Los Angeles to do a taping for it. Said he's not supposed to say anything about it, but it's going to be out sooner than you think. He says he knows the date and it'll be pretty soon. It's a big freaking deal. They interviewed all kinds of people, and the most interesting person they interviewed is Vince McMahon. He mentions they covered the whole life of Vince McMahon, and he was asked of every single subject you can think about considering Vince McMahon. And yeah, just say like they were way into the making of the documentary when obviously the Vince McMahon out of WWE and allegations all kind of popped up over the last couple of years. The company, the payoffs, as Meltzer said here as well. So yeah, Meltzer under the indication that there's all this new stuff's going to be in the documentary and covered properly. I mean, as with all things, JP, go with a pinch of salt. But I read this news and was like, oh, actually, might have a real documentary on our hands. I mean, it might depend on, how much, power Vince has as to what goes into the documentary. If he retains any power whatsoever on it, then you can probably expect it to be a puff piece that glosses over some of these bigger stories. But I don't know. What's your confidence level when it comes to Netflix and this type of stuff? There's obviously similarities to other stories they've covered over the last few years that I know you've been high on.
Yeah, exactly. And okay, so there's stuff on this that if you look at it from who are the people behind it, and for like the executive producer is Bill Simmons, who has had, like, in terms of his career, in terms of doing production, like has always been very good around sports. And in particular, like a lot of the 30 for 30, he's kind of like heavily involved in that as well. I was initially kind of like very skeptical when I heard about it, but then, and just thinking about this, the idea that they've got an opportunity here to really tell a proper unvarnished story. One, because the problem with every Vince McMahon story that he is in control of, he doesn't do anything wrong, which inherently makes it a shit documentary. Why? Because your subject is lying to you. Now, Netflix did do the Hulk Hogan Gorka documentary, which was actually quite good for what I thought it was. The Nobody Speak. And I thought that was very good. But in many ways, like Hogan, he's a puppet in it who's doing it for the money, Kel Surprise. This one, I think initially I just thought, well, Vince McMahon's involved, so he's going to maintain a level of control, and that level of control is going to make sure that you're not going to hear about like involvement in like kind of corruption or him being even challenged on these accounts. So I think there's a couple of things at work here. The potential, if it's a series, which it should be, because I don't like, you would want his story demands, if you're doing it in proper detail, like 5 to 6 parts. And there's an absolute ton of people you need to speak to across the board. Unfortunately, a lot of them are wrestling people, so there's a natural level of bullshit. The director of this is Chris Smith, and that's interesting. It's certainly from his series on that, and he's the guy who's like, he makes documentaries for Netflix all the time. So Wham, he made Jim and Andy, The Great Beyond. We was talking about Jim Carrey on the pre-show as well. There, the Fire Fest film, that was him. He did a film called he did a film called
Which one? There was 2 of them, wasn't there? There was a Netflix one and was it a HBO one, the other one? Remember one being good and one being shit.
The Netflix one, The Greatest Pie That Never Happened, which is the one with the famous kind of like gifts to it as well. And that's what he does, is he makes these kind of documentaries. And I think for the most part, he's also involved in Tiger King and the rest of it. So the most part, it's not going to be interesting to him if he can't tell the story that he wants to do. In fact, it's just going to be kind of shit if that's the case. And they have reputations they want to uphold. So I'm probably a bit more uplifted. What I don't think we'll see is Vince McMahon being challenged on this stuff. I think that's the thing that's always going to be missing. There's never going to be a point where Vince McMahon is going to actually answer any questions about this in any kind of deep and meaningful way. But I wonder now if they're still doing interviews for it, and it's been a while since the first level of allegations come out. It's been how many months now? I want to say it was like felt like September or so when he like a lot of these stories when we had the TKO merger in particular. So it makes me think that maybe that they're getting these kind of extra interviews in for the final part. So I'm a bit more enthusiastic. But it probably will never deliver the kind of bollocking that man absolutely fucking deserves. So there.
This is the thing, I mean, obviously, obviously TKO merger was last year, but I think the allegations, it feels like they were last year. I think they were 2023 when it all kicked off. So they've been I know, it's scary, isn't it? But like, obviously, been in production that entire time. So you'd think it'd be included. And that's the thing, like, as much as I would love a hit piece, genuinely, like, I love a Dark Side of the Ring where it's just fucking You know, they always kind of avoid going after Vince too hard, don't they? On that, it's always like the side characters. Like it's you know, you want to see like you know that happen. I do think you've got to tell that story right because it is an interesting story, and there is a pile of negatives that shouldn't be glossed over. But then there is also, you know, the not even positives really, but like the, you know, the just a factual, you know, birth of this version of WWF slash WWE, the birth of WrestleMania. You can tell the old wives' tale version, or you can tell the real version about how he basically got the company on the cheap. But then there is the you know, the truth of the matter of you know, what he did for the company in the 80s again. But then with the caveat of, but at the expense of, you know, the entire wrestling scene. But then it's like, well, but also somebody was going to go national anyway at some point. It was just Vince got there first. It's a very complex story that you can't tell in just black or white terms. It has to be, you know, told properly with the positives and the negatives and warts and all. So I think if it's the fact that it's a series, because I hadn't realized that going in, makes me feel a lot more confident because I'm like, okay, yeah, you could tell that story. You know, episode 1 is, you know, Vince gets the WWF off his dad on the cheap, and then it's all that stuff in the 80s into like the steroid trial. I can imagine that being a whole episode. I'm sure there'll be a fucking episode on the Attitude Era because, of course, they're going to have to be. And Ted Turner was trying to put us out of business and all of that stuff. Hopefully, they can tell that story in a grown-up way, which isn't the you know, the ridiculous WWE way where billionaires are bad unless they're Vince McMahon. You know, version of the story they tell. You could cover Benoit, you could cover, you know, all kinds of things in the 2000s through to the very serious allegations and Vince's exit from the company the last couple of years would make it writes itself, doesn't it? Like there's too much material there for a film. You know, when we were talking about that, but there's enough there for a really good series if you do it right. Like anybody, like you said there, any director worth their salt would look at that source material and rub their hands together. And then those last 2 episodes probably write themselves when it comes to all the stuff that we've learned over the last couple of years as well. Like that's a good story, you know, as horrible as it is as a real life story. Like just thinking about it, like that could be it'd be an eye opener for a lot of people who, you know, obviously don't follow this stuff as closely as we do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it should be, because I thought the wrestlers actually did a good job of getting through to a non kind of wrestling fan audience for how it was made, the levels of production, and just the fact that you could go along with it. Now, this is obviously different, and this falls into what I suppose in many ways, because they are going to be interviewing him as well. It should fall into whether or not, see, like the Beckham documentary, for example, which I kind of loved, partly because there was like the subject matter, but when it came to the kind of more challenging stuff, it didn't want to upset its subject matter, so it kind of brushed away from it, which was clearly about like kind of infidelities. So is this going to do the same? But there is like the potential for you're effectively telling the story of modern wrestling through Vince McMahon, because he is the connective tissue ultimately between wrestling as this disparate kind of low rent activity going on in spread out through all the kind of throughout the United States, and he just takes over it entirely into a monopoly. You've got then to the idea of multi-billion-dollar like mergers, like to create the company and kind of TKO and a monolith, and regardless of the ups and downs, like what is a monolith in today's modern entertainment? You want to tell all of this stuff, and it's the story that to grown-up fans, like you're telling like what is in some ways similar to like the birth of like TV and how we are today in terms of our own media consumption. And I won't bang on about it too much, but the idea that of how television going into cable as well, and wrestling being at like kind of like forefront of that, like that's the kind of like I think some of the bigger stories that we're going to end up there as well. So yeah, I'm really looking forward like to this. I'm just always trepidatious because any documentary about wrestling never feels like it ever scratches that itch, probably in the way that Beyond the Mat did, because I was just grateful that there was a good documentary about wrestling out there, and I thought, oh, thank God, and I was more grateful for that, and I want this to be good, and so it means I just don't want to have to wade through lots of wrestling bullshit in order to get there, and just Vince is a genius and we're just going to brush over any other failings on this, rather than he's not a genius, he's just more ballsy than a lot of people and a lot more fucking amoral.
Thought you were about to go full. He's not a genius. He's just a very naughty boy, like for Brian. I thought that
He's
was
more
good.
than a naughty boy, mate. That bloke,
Yes,
honestly. Yeah.
that is true. And let's hope we learn that with the documentary. But yeah, I'm somewhat
Yeah.
more hopeful as you said coming out of it. But while we're on Vince, very quickly because I don't think there's much WWE to talk this week. I watched Raw, nothing happened because it's Raw. But yeah, obviously we've got Punk and Cody are going to be head to head next week on Raw, so that's probably the more notable thing coming up. Punk obviously also announced for a Elimination Chamber in Australia because somebody's got to work those shows. JP, you know, somebody's got to put the miles in and come to work every now and then. So that's interesting to note as well. But yeah, I think apparently next week's Raw as well is going unopposed. So no, obviously with the football season winding down. Could be a good number that as Punk and Cody wink at each other and make AEW references. As I'll be hoping and be staying up live to watch if it is the case. I'll be excited for that. But yeah, any notes on this week's Raw or what they've coming up? I presume you didn't waste your time staying up to watch Jinder Mahal main event of fucking Raw last night. I say I watched it. I saw the highlights on YouTube this morning because I wasn't going to last that full show myself either.
No, I didn't know. Was the Seth Rollins story an injury at work as well? Because there was something about him being.
No,
is
it
it?
looks like we're gonna find out in a couple of days how bad it is. It looks like carrying Jinder Mahal very legitimately as injured Seth Rollins. It was quite the funniest thing about it was that like Jinder Mahal's become like this meme to like the not Matty but the positive WWE audience who like want to pretend that Jinder's actually good. And then he went out there to complete silence and shit the bed. It was the match you imagine it would be, and I suffered for hours in the couple of minutes worth of highlights I saw from it. But I will say, as tends to be the case on most of the shows these days, Drew McIntyre and Cody had a good back and forth promo, but I'm expecting Punk and Cody to be even stronger next week. On the slide, decent little promo Drew these days. I've been enjoying the stuff.
Yeah. I think this is it, and I think this is what happens when you have competent booking in there and consistency of character as well. I mean, yeah, I've got nothing to add about this week's Raw. I think I saw it was the big thing. It was Rollins versus Jinder Mahal, which is like a version of hell for I think like a lot of our audience certainly. So not something I was going to bother with there as well. Punk and Rhodes, I'll be watching that, even if it's shit. I'll be watching that. That's something that and frankly, because of YouTube, it'll be up there straight away in the morning, so I don't need to worry about the rest of the show. But it's the Rumble, and they're getting things into gear, and I do like the way that there's an element of doubt there, and that I think is just the thing that you want in Rumbles. Now, we were speaking earlier on about like the patrons poll and all the various Rumbles that are up there. I always just think the simple thing is you just want that element of doubt. I think part of the reason people love 92, for example, is there's an element of doubt of who's going to win it. It's not completely obvious, and that adds like a real life sporting aspect to it. And I think, just by having Punk and Cody there as well, as long as they're in the final four, you're just going to be right. Well, I'm going to at least be interested in the end. So I look forward, like you say, the smarky fan in me will never go and wants to hear them kind of make digs at AEW as well. Why? Because I just think I've ever grown up in that regard. Like I used to love it when they did it in the Monday Night Wars, so I'll love it now as well. And
there'll be a line. Yeah, I'm gonna mention as well. You've stuck an ear into our Raw notes. Paul Walter Hauser. What's this about at the Emmys? Did he win an Emmy?
Actually, weirdly,
this Raw a little while ago.
He was on. I think he was on AEW. He was the one who he got attacked on Rampage. It feels like I've put it in completely the wrong place. But he won an Emmy, which feels like it's more like kind of that WWE mainstream stuff. And then weirdly did a rap for it. And actually, the surprisingly good Apple TV show Blackbird, where he plays a serial killer, and he plays it very, very well. And your man Taron Egerton has to try and like kind of convince him to fess up, and it is actually it's surprisingly good show. Like a lot of stuff on Apple TV, most people never would have seen it as well there. But yeah, he brought up Matt Cardona there as well, Kota Ibushi in there as well, which I thought he wasted your time here, mate. At the Emmys in a rap in there as well, and he finishes with like "Get the Tables," and you think, oh, fuck it, mate, you're up there, and you just prove into the world. And he wrestled at Heart of Wrestling Revolver as well. So he doesn't look like an athlete, mate. Put it that way.
He'll be going to I was going to say WWE Hall of Fame, AW Hall of Fame, but at some point as well. I was wondering what that was. Apple TV is IWC's best TV. I agree. What the fuck? What happened to DME's
Yeah.
fucking Best Call Saul losing again? What's going on there? Like can't buy themselves in the world, can they? The lads, one of the
Succession dominated, didn't it?
Did they? No, okay, fair enough. That's understandable. But yeah,
Yeah.
apparently I saw that like Better Call Saul's had like 70 nominations over the years and hasn't won one award. Bullshit, in my opinion. Oh well, yeah, I wondered about that.
It was like when Scorsese had never won Best Director, and he was like good. In some ways, it's like an element of like of spite that's the case. And then I think they gave it to him for Hugo, and you're like, oh for fuck, you ignored Goodfellas for this and Raging Bull like for this shit. So yeah. Fuck them. Fuck award ceremonies.
Well, I can't think of a segue, but from there, then we'll get into the the rest of the
company that will probably never be winning awards.
Yes, but at TNA, we'll kick things off with. I was very busy on Saturday night. We kind of got three main subjects coming up here. That's obviously we'll talk AEW and Collision that was going on Saturday night. As well, there was a point on Saturday night, JP, where I had three different split screens going on up on my projector. I had TNA Hard to Kill as the main one. I had Collision in the corner, which I'd switch to every now and then. I had a bit of New Japan in the other corner as well. Once that started at silly o'clock in the morning, didn't last all the way to the end. Ended up having to rewatch the couple of main events from New Japan much later, but did stick with out of the three, I suppose the most noteworthy, although it is threatened, like I said before, threatened to slip down the rookie sheet just based on what we saw at the show was TNA Hard to Kill. I suppose we'll start there from the three big quote unquote shows from the weekend. TNA's back, JP, or Impact never went away, which I think is probably the bigger talking point coming out of this show, because gotta say, it was a show. Hard to Kill. It existed. It was perfectly functional. It wasn't bad. It was, if it was a regular Impact pay-per-view at any point last year, it's the type of show about an hour from now on this show, me and you would go, yeah, it's pretty good. That I always enjoy the Impact shows when I tune in. Yeah, it was always fun. Look forward to the next one. Anywho, and then we move on. It felt like that, which you can say is still a good show in a vacuum, but don't know if this was best foot forward for a big rebrand. JP, I didn't come out of it any more excited about the new TNA. Didn't come out of it, shouting and screaming about a particular match or wrestler. It didn't really have that. It was fine. I don't know. What were your thoughts on it? Presentation got an upgrade a little bit, bit of yellow thrown around, a few towels in the crowd to bring back some of that Impact Zone atmosphere. But I don't know, felt a little bit like window dressing to me rather than a real reboot. What say you?
This was it. Yeah, I think this was like the second bullet point I had down on here is like the new TNA is the old Impact, or like certainly the Impact of the last couple of years, where it's like good Josh Alexander match, check. Good Jordan Grace match, check. Are you going to have Mike Bailey involved in a really fun match? Yeah, but none of it was like really go out of your way to necessarily go and see. And it's difficult. So I suppose from a rebrand of TNA, if it was going back to old TNA, and I saw Chris Wilson raise this point in our Discord, sometimes what you wanted it to be was just really wacky, and it didn't have anything like that. It was easy to watch, like a lot of Impact pay-per-views are, but it felt like what we were being kind of sold on, I suppose what we were hoping for, was they've managed to steady the ship with Impact up to the point of going into TNA. And at TNA, they were going to kick on a little bit more. So we were going to see stuff there. But there's things about this as a product that are always going to kind of hold it back. Like there are particular wrestlers where you go, they have no business being on cards like this, like who you really need to get shot of, and we'll get into some of those as well. And like I say, for a production upgrade, and I saw, those towels, and Americans love that stuff. So I was like, yeah, they'll love all of that stuff there as well. And I thought, okay, bit of sheen for watching so many TNA shows where the top bit is just completely blacked out. And in fact, we saw points, particularly in like Destination American era, where it felt like there was no crowd there at all. They were just spotlight was only on the ring, and that's all you could absolutely see. So to them to have their biggest attendance in 8 years of just over 1,600 people is bloody good for them.
Fair enough.
And I would also say, run this venue again. It looks great for TV, and if they're going to run those kind of theatre style halls, I think that absolutely works for them. But I can't say I'm particularly enthused with how they're going in the future. There wasn't anything shiny or particularly new on there. And the big signings were like, well, they are what they always have been for TNA, which is effectively WWE cast-offs. That's who they are. They're the kind of people they get in. So I came away at the end of it going, okay, it's, TNA is just the old Impact.
What's Dirk Lundgren doing in the Impact Zone? That's what it felt like. It was very, and I've got no. I will talk about that sound in a minute. No problem with it. Good for him. Good for them. About the right level for everyone involved, I would say. But yeah, that's kind of it. That's what my main talking point coming out of it was. We were following it along on the Discord, and it was interesting kind of to have the conversation in live terms. It was. I think halfway through the Moose and Alex Shelley match, a couple of us were already calling this a busted flush. Maybe that tells you what I thought about Alex Shelley and Moose in the main event, to be honest. A bit boring. Solid, but, this show needed more than solid. And there wasn't anything more than solid on the show. Like, my main talking point coming out of it was like, I presume there must be a reason why Leon Slater wasn't on the pay-per-view. You tell me if he's in the spoilers for the TV coming up. I'm actually not fully aware of that myself. I don't mind being spoiled if the listeners don't. But like that seemed odd for me. That would have given it obviously he's not a main event level talent, but if you had someone like him, I could just picture it. Like him on the undercard, like blowing us away with a great singles match and being like, oh, that's what the new TNA is going to be about, young lads like that. Or, if they weren't, one of the bigger problems, like I said before, they were head-to-head with the New Japan pay-per-view. They just weren't head-to-head with the New Japan pay-per-view. Like, on the TV, spoilers for the next day, what I do know, Okada's there, Ospreay's there, and it's like, I mean, cool, you're going to have that on TV for this week, but, like, maybe best foot forward, lads. Maybe when you found out you were head-to-head with New Japan on Saturday, you do a Sunday show instead, and maybe it's easy for me to say, but eat the cost of doing some Monday TV tapings rather than your favorite Saturday, Sunday, just for the reboot, because I think it was quite important. The more exciting elements of what this new TNA were going to be was those things. It was those announcements that really didn't really come to fruition on the pay-per-view itself, even if they had like a Mustafa Ali waiting in the wings. I'm just naming things that I think are reasonable, because I'm not saying, oh, they should have had Christopher Daniels versus AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe in a three-way rematch and, brought back the old TNA and had Abyss in the main event. Like, I know these things are impossible, but I think there are things that are possible that we would have came away from it going, oh, this wasn't just the same Impact it was before Christmas. There's someone new. There's something new. There's a match that I'm proper raving about. There just wasn't anything like that. And I think they've got an uphill battle. It's hard for them to get people when everybody's tied up. It's hard for them to, carve a niche in a landscape that has WWE and AEW way ahead of them in the pecking order. But I still, even though I give them that sympathy, and I do think it was a pretty good show, I still think there was room for them to do more, and maybe they had deals that they tried to do, and all of the things I mentioned there were all things they wanted to do, but for logistic reasons they couldn't. But we got to call a spade at the end. It was lacking, really, and I was like, okay, I'm probably going to treat it with the same importance I did Impact running up to Christmas.
And that's it. This should have been, you've just said that, and what was this ultimately? It was a massive rebrand. It's going back to what is the name that they've always kind of been known as, and they're going back to it, something that they kind of felt almost embarrassed about and to get rid of, and they decided to come back and embrace it. And they didn't do anything spectacular from it. And like you say, there was nothing fresh. That's the thing. And I think, you look at some of the, again, when you've got fucking Tommy Dreamer as a champion and stuff like that, never should have gone to this stage on there. Fucking PCO and Dirty Dango, and you've got like it felt very lackluster, a lot of the stuff in there. Why? Because Nick Nemeth had turned up in New Japan, So him turning up in TNA isn't really a surprise because
It wasn't
again, New
enough.
Japan, it wasn't
It
enough.
was fine, but it wasn't enough. Yeah.
Dana Brooke coming in, it's like, well, what? Like that's not a game changer in any way, shape, or form, and you know that's the kind of thing for it. And it wasn't like and that's the problem they're up against. If you want great wrestling, you're probably going to go to AEW. If you want the kind of storyline sports entertainment stuff, you're going to go to WWE, and they don't deliver good enough on either of those two kind of aspects in the main. So for this, it's a show, and if you're asking for money for this show, it's not really going to be there. And I thought it kind of, there was an image that summed up the show for me when Dana Brooke is there in this overly jazzed up outfit, and there is just some biker bloke stood behind her with his top off, and he's covered in fucking tattoos, and he's holding 2 beers. And I just thought that's the thing with TNA on that. They're trying to present themselves and do these kind of sports entertainment stuff, and there's just this kind of like shitty aspect to it going on there. And yeah, the matches as well. What was memorable from them?
Memorable for wrong reasons in some cases. I mean, as you were saying in the chat there, we can get into the card itself, and I don't even think it's necessarily worth breaking down individual matches on this undercard, but like, I think that's a lot of the problem though, because as you kind of alluded to there, that was another thing for me was like, there's people on this undercard who just shouldn't have been there. Dirty Dango. Just tells you right away what type of product this is. I'm sorry, maybe he's a lovely bloke backstage, and I can understand like the company wanting to reward the people who stuck with them when they were Impact, but like him, Decay, people like that, just get off, just go away. Go. Santino Marella is the fucking GM still. Go away. Like that is so low rent and so not recognizing, I suppose, what the net, as much as there were positives of Impact's run the last couple of years, those types of guys are the negative of it. And I think you probably need to trim some of that fat if this was going to be anything other than just not even a rebrand, just a rename, which is kind of what it is. And yeah, it's going up and down that undercard. Like I say, I think the other thing I was going to say actually at the other thing that sums up what the show was, pre-show, like wrestling companies, correct me if I'm wrong, JP, going back to the what was the one that we used to do, the free-for-all, like, and AEW used to get this wrong, when they first had their pay-per-views, and they didn't seem to understand that the pre-show existed to sell the pay-per-view, so they'd throw no legs out there in a shit battle royal and blue pants and not understand that, no, you need to sell the pay-per-view, that's what this is for. Like, it was such a weird decision to put it on Impact Plus. Like, they had it on Impact Plus that you have to pay for, so you have to pay like $8-9 or whatever that costs. Even if you bought the show on Fight, and even if you bought the pay-per-view on YouTube, you couldn't watch the pre-show on YouTube or Fight. Like, show me a more TNA decision than that, JP. Like, I was genuinely excited on Saturday night to stay up and watch this. More fuel me. But I was excited even to throw the pre-show on and get myself kind of hyped up before watching the pay-per-view. They lost that opportunity to just bring some new eyeballs in who might have watched the pre-show. And I say that might have helped them watch buy the main show, but it did... some of the shite on there, maybe it didn't, with AJ Francis and DJ Woo Kid on your pre-show, and worse than that, the bloated corpse of Tommy Dreamer was on there against Crazy Steve in your pre-show main event. So maybe locking him behind a paywall wasn't the worst decision in the world, but it just felt like a bad start, from the beginning. Really, it was just like, oh yeah. And to be fair, there were a couple of Steve Macklin and Rich Swann being on that pre-show must have been seen by about a couple hundred people, It's just like, yeah. Well,
and in front of lots of empty seats with towels on them. Because you could just see the towels hanging off the seats as like, okay, they've given these out to everyone in order for them to swing them around their heads. Rich Swann and Steve Macklin should be on the main show. It's not going to reinvent the wheel, but these are two guys who are former world champions. So you would want them as certainly part of your mid card, and they're wrestling in front of the lowest attendance at that point in time because people are just arriving on a network that people aren't getting. And I think the idea, the logic is, okay, do pre-shows work for them? So why don't we just give an extra hour of wrestling? But it's not good wrestling, not wrestling that people are going to want to necessarily pay for. Who's wanting to pay for Tommy Dreamer and Crazy Steve? on there as well. So it was just matches really for the sake of matches. Now the version I saw had the countdown on it, so I only found out about this after the fact rather than watching it live, because I watched it with no spoilers on the Sunday morning. But yeah, I mean, other than Rich Swan's get up, which looked terrible, but I was thinking Steve Macklin, and he is a more focused part of the spoilers. I won't go into anything more than that. At least he's on that. But this is a show going in a new era. And when they did the promo video, Steve Macklin was part of that promo video. And he's done a really good job of being that kind of upper mid-card heel who you can slot into the main event role. So it's like, but you got space for dirty. Like, I know it's an easy figure to kind of hate upon, but fucking hell. Like, they're the kind of lads you want around this. You want them all to mean something. And they're better wrestlers. So put them on the main show.
Well, running through the main show, like I say, I thought the Knockouts Ultimate X match was a good start to the show. As far as like throwing something out there that was like a big bump fest and gave you kind of like, you know, something to get a little bit excited about. Some of the individual bumps were quite ropey in there. A couple of them maybe didn't fully come off, but entertaining in the main. I thought that was like a good way to get things going. Like I say, PCO and Dirty Dango, which that wasn't on the card. The Knockouts tag didn't think was up to much either. Saban, Kushida, and Vikingo was fine. I think I'd have enjoyed that a lot more if Vikingo had maybe gone over. I think that would have been my choice, but I'm guessing maybe they don't have the dates on him. Obviously, there's this AAA relationship we can talk about as well coming up. That would have been a pair again. I just had to be some reason Leon Slater wasn't in this match, because that feels like the perfect place to debut. Imagine if this is the thing with a lot of this card. Imagine if it was just Leon Slater versus Vikingo, and it was like, oh my god, this is what the new X division is going to be, and blow everybody's heads off. It's a bit like the tag team title match that's coming up here as well on the show. Like, I've got positive to say about Josh Alexander and Alex Hammerstone. We'll get to that in a minute. But I feel like that was another good like point of like where things went a bit wrong on the show. ABC, Grizzled Young Vets, Rascals, Mike Bailey, and Laredo Kid. Like, that felt very typical Impact to just throw all the tag teams in a four-way, particularly ABC and the Rascals. Like, they get everybody on the card and get your shit in. Again, at that point in the card, this was head-to-head with Collision, so I had Collision on like my little screen, and Collision had that banger six-man tag with FTR and Daniel Garcia against the House of Black going on, which was getting 10 times the crowd reaction and was 10 times the match. I would say that this was fine for what it was as a spot fest, or as not even a spot fest, that's unfair to the wrestlers, a move fest, which a four-way tag is going to be. It's harder to tell a structured story, but we already had that earlier with the Ultimate X match. What the card needed at this point, because the card didn't have one really, maybe with one exception, but before it in a little way, was like a big banger tentpole. This is a match. This is what the future of Impact's going to be. You could have done that with two of these teams. You could do that with a stronger single tag debut for Grizzled Young Veterans. Just don't think the card was asking for another one of these types of matches on the card, and it was fine. It wasn't necessarily bad, but for me, it kind of summed up where the problem was going with the card at that point.
For most, I was just annoyed looking at this match, not because I thought it was bad, but there was lots of people I like, and no one was able to stand out. Because, like I say, it was a move fest. So what's the point in it? And, you know, there wasn't, I didn't come away thinking about Grizzled Young Vets in TNA. Like, they were there, they were in the match, but there wasn't any space or time. And you're right about it. That's kind of
in a promo myself, like, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing with it as well. And I don't know why Trent Seven wasn't there. Is there like a big story? Or was it just like an injury
Airports,
thing?
Something, travel issues, you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for that to be the case. Like there was like tempting there too, though, isn't it?
I know.
This is the last week's intro. We see this though. We used to see this a lot with Impact in particular, where they would be, okay, what are we going to put on a match? We're just going to put on 6 X Division wrestlers, and it'd just be people who get lost in the shuffle, which is often the role that Ace Austin and Chris Bay and Trey Miguel have ended up in so much of it. And in many ways, those are the guys who should be the cornerstone of like a new TNA. They're people who've been around a while, who the crowds naturally like, but they're not allowed to kind of shine. And as a result, like the stuff that was allowed to shine. So we should say about the PCO Dirty Dango matches, it probably ended up going even more fucking south because I thought it lasted a minute and I was like, oh, thank Christ. And then it was made into a fucking tag match. And I just had my head in my hands.
And there comes
throughout
Rhino.
Oh, it was just
Before the
getting
Rhino
wider.
20 years ago, mate.
Yeah.
Like, honestly.
Probably got more of a soft spot for Rhino than you have, but bloody hellfire. And PCO
doing in 2002, mate. It's been a long time. He's always over. That was kind of the chat Ewan was kind of saying in the chat as well, like on Discord, about how over Rhino is, and he is, and he got a great reaction. But I just feel like for me, this is my take. I think he's house show over. He's like it's like trotting out Big Show and Kane on WWF house shows in 2020. You know, it's like, yeah, the crowd, because they've been on TV for 20 years, the crowd are going to give him a great reaction, and that's a kind of over, but it doesn't necessarily mean you want to watch them on you know, primetime television, or I suppose in this case non-primetime television. But you get my point. Like, it doesn't make for a good TV product or a good pay-per-view product when it's just Rhino doing all the spots he's done for 25 years. I thought you were gonna say what we should pick up on before we go to the last couple of matches. Unless you've got more to say on the undercard. I thought you'd enjoyed this one. Definitely Josh Alexander and Alex Hammerstone. I don't think it quite hit the level where it's like, that's the one everyone's going to be talking about coming out of this pay-per-view. But it was by a country mile the strongest thing on the show.
I'm glad you said
your
that.
Boy Hammer. I know you love your boy Hammer, so I knew it'd be right up there for you. I don't think I'm not even sure it cracked 4 stars, so that probably tells you, you know, this card in general. It's like, it was a really nice 3.75 star match, well worked, smartly worked. Josh Alexander's, you know, very, very good. Worked at a deliberate pace. I will say Alex Hammerstone was the closest thing to a newish star it felt like TNA might have on their hands coming out of this show. I know he's got a couple of contracts on his table, so hopefully they land him. But yeah, don't know whether it's damn over faint praise, but I thought it was the shining star of the undercard, really. Josh Alexander and Alex Hammerstone.
I would be, you know, I was worried about this match because I've watched so much MLW, and in many ways I didn't know if Alex Hammerstone was actually any good, because that's the problem with MLW. So much is smoke and mirrors. You don't fucking know what is truth. So I was like, is he actually any good? Is he good? And I thought, well, he's in there with Josh Alexander, so if he has a shit match here, we're pretty certain that's not down to Josh Alexander. And the thing I thought as well, I kind of convinced myself, he's actually quite short. He's not that big a guy, but in MLW he kind of stands out. He's not fucking massive here. Maybe it was just me, but he looked clear. It was like, okay, he's a really big guy. So first of all, for what they like out of their wrestlers, he kind of looks the part. So he had that there, and I thought, well, is he going to be able to stay the pace throughout the match? And he's always going to have. He isn't without his limitations, but he looked ready for like a bigger stage than what he's been on before. And when he got into the big kind of power move stage towards the end, like say about the deliberate pacing, that's when I really started to enjoy it. And I knew he wasn't going to go over. It wouldn't have made sense. Josh Alexander's one of their top guys. That's the direction you always want to be going in, particularly if you've got him there as well. And I suppose very similarly, talking about Josh Alexander, I think Alex Hammerstone had the kind of night that Jade Chung had in many ways. It was a bit better from it, because I know she was like a little bit nervous and everything else, but I thought in the main, she kind of looked the part, and she will definitely grow into the role. What they could offer Hammerstone, if they are going to go for him, is he's not going to have to wait around in NXT. And maybe that's what he, you know, ultimately they'll think, well, with that kind of look and everything else, that he'll actually stand out in NXT if that is a place that's offering that's on the table for him. He shouldn't go anywhere near AEW. There's no space. They don't need him. All the usual stuff that we say about AEW signings. TNA, that there should be, what they should be offering him is the potential to be a serious player. Almost like this should be the finishing school for when you sign for like.
Nope, JP muted.
Sorry, I don't know why I muted myself there. But he was also kind of over as well. And we'll speak about someone else from MLW who was over to a crowd in a way that I wasn't expecting as well. But it wasn't like he got kind of lost in the shuffle. I expected worse and came out thinking 3.75 and a clear match of the night for me. This was the match I was like, yeah, I'm kind of excited about that.
And yeah, I suppose the final 2 matches, Jordan Grace, Trinity for the Knockouts title, felt like a, you know, again, that Trinity was very clearly on the way out. The betting odds we talked about on the weekend show kind of said that. So it was more just a strong win for Jordan Grace. Don't have a huge amount to say about that. Ash by Elegance turning up, or Ash by Excellence, as the commentary kept calling her. Dana Brooke turned up. There's your big star. Yeah, not for me. She was for George Iceman, whoever that is.
No idea.
Your guess is as good as mine. Honestly, I think at this point, I think I'd muted the show for a minute to see what was going on in Collision, and I genuinely didn't know who it was. I was staring at this blonde woman going, I should know that is. Like, I should know. And then I figured out eventually it was Dana Brooke. But yeah, whatever. Very TNA sign, and maybe we can talk here with Dolph at the end. And yeah, main event, Moose versus Alex Shelley. I would say was a good bit of business in that. I think Alex Shelley. I think a lot of like the hardcore Impact and TNA fans, the vibe I get is they wanted to see that Sabin match, and I am still surprised they didn't do it. And it felt like they planted all the seeds for that. When Alex Shelley won the belt and Sabin as X Division champion, like you would have thought there'd be something with them two that would be paid off before the end of Shelley's reign. But I do think Moose makes a better champion for a new version of TNA. Real life issues aside with Moose, which we've talked about for year on year. But as far as being like, a newer name and somebody who fits being world champion, I think Moose works, and Alex Shelley is nicer little worker as he is. I don't know if this match kind of showed me, and I kind of keep saying it on the weekend show whenever we preview an Alex Shelley match. Alex Shelley's name written down on paper often excites me more than the real life. Is that sacrilege to say? I'm not saying it was bad. I know he's a good worker. He's a worker's work, and he's like IWC Randy Orton. He's like, he's fucking every little thing he's doing in the match is definitely by the book and correct and the right thing to do. And young wrestlers should work with him and learn. And all of these things can be true while saying the finished product that at least I've seen on these big Impact shows is fine. Not bad. Not good. It's in that WWE realm of like, Seth Rollins is never going to get past 3.75 stars for me.
Yeah.
Alex Shelley's always going to hover between 3.5 to 3.75 for me. Really, really solid wrestler, great veteran, well respected. Doesn't necessarily come off as an entertaining world champion for me, but that might just be me.
I think I probably had very low expectations for an Alex Shelley title run. It's an Alan Shelley there, whoever that is. And so I didn't expect. First of all, it's the third longest run in company history, which I was astonished when they said that fact on that. I thought maybe I've misheard that. That can't be the case. It is TNA. They're not exactly someone known for like sticking the title on for people for a long time. But I was like, is that really the case? Please, someone tell us in the chat if that is there. I think like his role, it felt like kind of very transitional, and they still did a thing with their world champions of we throw shit up against the wall and we see what sticks. And they hadn't put the title on Shelley, and they'd put it on Sabin before, and it didn't move the needle. And they had the title on various other people throughout the year. So it was Alex Shelley's go. The matches themselves, it was like a lesser version of the Josh Alexander run, where I kind of generally liked the wrestler, but the matches weren't up to the level that Josh Alexander's were. Without being ever like bad, I was just never enthused for them because I never quite bought the idea that Alex Shelley somehow he was world champion. Basically, he was doing tag and he was coming back from kind of semi-retirement, and then all of a sudden he was like world champion, and then he started to retain the title all the time. So it was kind of strange, and then it's come to an end for putting it on Moose, who's now part of a stable that was created that night as well in the system. They were just together on the pre-show. It was just like put together, and it was like the first time they were ever there. But your man D'Angelo Williams was there, that NFL bloke who turned up, had one brilliant match, and then fucks off, never to wrestle again. He was there. So I'm assuming like he's back in there. So like that's one thing to be excited about. Whether or not is he any good? Was it a complete fluke? Like, we'll know.
I want to know. Should do it again.
Exactly. Yeah. Just leave the memories alone. But it never really grabbed me, this match, and it was.
And it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad in any way. Probably
No.
3.5 stars I'd go with. And
Yeah.
Ewan saying in the chat there, he feels like Matty when I slag off Roman Reigns. Listen, put some 2005 Alex Shelley in front of me and I'll join you. Put some Motor City Machine Guns in front of me and I'll join you as well. But modern Alex Shelley, very good. But I don't know. I think he's an idea rather than a reality.
Yeah.
Maybe that's mean. Maybe people who've been watching his indie stuff. I don't know. I just feel like with those kind of pros, he's almost professional to a fault. I don't think he's ever going to go to that next level because he knows he doesn't have to, and maybe that's the quote unquote right decision for a professional wrestler. But again, I just don't think it translates as a modern world champion.
Nah.
Level. But anyway, that's me. I don't want to slag him off anymore because I do quite like the bloke. I think he seems like a lovely man, great promo, cracking looking lad, very respected worker, but not for me at this point. But yeah, Ziggler came out, and I think again, the reason I put the belt on Moose is Ziggler Moose probably feels more appropriate, even if it's still it's Dolph Ziggler versus Moose. Can't get too excited about it, but it gave the crowd something. Ziggler was over. Great shot of him with his TNA top on, and like I say, like a right place for him, right type of wrestler for this level. TNA is. I wish for them they could get one or two others. Interesting that Ali doesn't seem to be coming in based on the Impact spoilers, unless I've misread them. JP, maybe he's realizing it's a good idea to stay away from TNA, but for Ziggler, probably the right fit for him, and he'll be Matt Cardona will be back. He'll be working him in TNA main events before the end of the year. You watch.
We will die at least knowing whether or not Dolph Ziggler would have meant something outside of the WWE system. We will know the answer to that question.
Him and Shelton Benjamin, mate. Big run coming for Shelton. Shelton X Benjamin. It's going to be a great tournament coming up.
Mate, I've seen Shelton Benjamin in several companies, and it's never connected. And that goes even including Global Force. You want to chuck that in there as well. But I think with Nick Nemeth,
for me, mate. Saw him turn up and barely got his gear on before the match had finished, and he's backstage again. That's how much work and effort he put into that book. And Jesus Christ,
straight around the Stanley Arms, I imagine that bloke instead. I can't get excited by Nick Nemeth coming in. However, it is the right landing spot, and TNA is the kind of company that have to try to see if they can get something extra out of the people. Dana Brooke, no, not at all. And it's like a lot of the surprises on this show. I say surprises. They were just kind of in the main kind of uninspiring. Nemeth, it's worth trying if it's low risk and it's not costing them the earth. But I get the impression between this and New Japan, he does give the impression of someone who's at least going to bother to a degree, who looks kind of excited by the challenge. Whether that wears off, because that happens to a lot of these WWE guys. And, we'll talk about Mustafa Ali in a bit as well. He's taking a slightly different approach, but it feels like those two guys at least are kind of putting themselves out there, and they're doing a few bits and bobs. Yeah, Cardona will be back in because he always fucking is. He never goes away. But yeah, can't present. He made the choice. He was going to be there rather than be at the New Japan show, which was the one thing I thought was ending. It was like, oh, we're not getting that big signing. And I was thinking, oh, it's probably because he's over at the bloody New Japan show, and then obviously he turns up in the Motley Crue t-shirt.
Any other notes on TNA before we'll probably do the New Japan show next? I think it ties in quite well. Any other notes on the new TNA, the show as a whole? And if it stand out for you from the spoilers, bear in mind the spoilers, folks, for the next couple of minutes. Don't have to necessarily give match results out, but sounds like a card that had a good time there. Sounds like Ospreay obviously gave it a bit of an emotional speech. That's the other thing, we didn't really, obviously there was a young vet. I know James Drake was at the same Liverpool TNA show as me in 2008. He took his ticket with him. I think he got a picture of himself backstage holding his ticket. Kind of shows TNA does mean something to people, I was rooting for them to win on Saturday night. Genuinely, there was a reason I was staying up for it. I don't usually stay up for Impact pay-per-views. I wanted it to go well, and there's definitely that love for the company that you kind of feel from some people there, that nostalgia, and it's interesting that it kind of stretches to the wrestlers as well. I am actually half interested in seeing what a Carter back in TNA looks like, what Ospreay being a TNA wrestler looks like, and just generally there's a bit of goodwill there, at least probably for this at least this first show from the tapings coming up this week.
And again, going to be fascinated to see how that comes across. That's the Snake Eyes show, isn't it? That's being, I don't know when it's coming out on the main show, but I think that's going to be on TNA Plus. I think it's called, that Endeavour streaming effort on there. It looked like a card. There was plenty of angst, and he got out over the fact that he doesn't hate TNA anymore. He's bloody right to for a long time. And you think about what that did and the level of anger that New Japan kind of felt about it lasted fucking years, like the guts of a decade as well, and more than a decade in Okada's case to come back in the role that he's in. I mean, it looks in the main like a kind of a generally like the TV tapings look kind of fun. Or the spoilers from the Snake Eye show makes it look kind of fun. I don't really want to go into them because I know we're going to end up reviewing them on there as well. But
Josh Alspray, I think, is on this week's Impact. I think that's one of the main ones. Yeah,
and I think on the Ospreay kind of going out tour before he's obviously full time in there, but more focus on Grizzle Young Vets, so that makes it interesting. And I wanted to bring up the fact they signed Zia Brookside and Danny Luna as well. There's a big UK influence in and around that company. It's something that they've really gone for, and I hope that they tie into it because it feels like they're going to be running some big shows over here as well at the same time. But the only other note was they announced the AAA partnership. Haven't they already had that? That's already been a thing. They did a TV episode a few weeks ago. It was them and AAA. So why this was suddenly new, I don't understand.
Just get on camera again. He fucking loves it, doesn't he? Loves coming out with his little clipboard and his headset off. I did think that. I was like, did I miss something? Am I just being stupid? Like, I'm sure this is already a thing. I'm sure there are already AAA wrestlers on this show.
Yeah.
And there have been. But oh God, it wasn't just me.
All the fucking time.
Got a MLW style though. Got a news cycle out of it. You and Ash, do you reckon they'll do a London show this year? They'd be daft if they don't.
I think so.
Because that last tour, like I was at the Coventry leg, it was passionate fans, packed venues. They didn't do London, didn't do Manchester. They could do those shows this time, if they came back before, and they could probably beat AEW to the smaller level market if they do it in the first half of the year. I think that would be extremely smart. And Zia being in the US helps them have UK representation. Platt says same with the Brazilian Vets being half based in Florida. Still, you can always rely on them too. So I'm sure we'll still check in with it, but excitement level quite a bit lower than what it was. I was hoping it would be going into the show, but we mentioned it a couple of times. Then we mentioned a few New Japan talents. I think it probably is the best time to segue into New Japan. Obviously, the New Japan had their Battle in the Valley show that started about halfway through Hard to Kill, which was or maybe there was an hour left, I think, of Hard to Kill when my two screens turned into 3 JP, and there was a point where I had a Battle in the Valley on where I saw a certain Jungle Boy Jack Perry in the corner, and not even working yet. Genuinely thought to myself, "Is that Collision? Wait, what channel's that?" And then I realized, "Fuck, it's New Japan. He's actually on there." I have a few notable debuts themselves. You mentioned Ali before. We can talk about that as well, JP. But Jack Perry on New Japan, and genuinely a very strong show. People haven't seen this one. I would at least recommend watching the last 2 matches from Battle in the Valley. Shingo and Moxley and Okada and Ospreay blew away anything on Impact massively. I think it was always going to happen. You do need to put up with some very, very ropey sound, a crowd that sounds like it's in the room next door, and commentary that has the ups and downs of volume like it's being recorded on StreamYard. It's not there's a shot at ourselves there. It's not the greatest, most professional production, but enough about us. The show itself was the usual pants stuff from Fight there. I'd forgotten about going in, JP, because you said that on the weekend show. You were like, "Oh, I'm excited for it, but remember what they're like in real life." And I was like, "What's he on about?" And you were like, the commentary and the production and the sound and all of that. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that." And then it felt like everybody had that same take as you, and then it turned out to be true. It was yet another very good show in a with a battle through production that you had to get through to enjoy.
But I would say, at least with this, I don't think the production dulled my interest in the show and generally how much I enjoyed it. Put it this way, I watched all of this. I made sure to watch all of this show from beginning to end.
Gotta be honest, I had to finish it today.
I wouldn't have blamed you for it as well. And if you are going to want to go for the highlights, the two big matches at the end deliver. Like, spoiler alert. I'm going to think of, like, there's not going to be that many shows this year. Certainly the New Japan. I don't know if New Japan are going to do any other shows this year that I'm going to be more excited by. But this feels like the best US show in years. Like, that they've done, genuinely. And even with those technical mishaps, for the stuff that kind of happened in the ring and what they delivered in a varied card that had a bit of everything. In some ways, the mistakes that TNA didn't do, New Japan ended up doing them better for how you should deliver it. I just wish that this New Japan show had TNA's production values. If it had that, you'd be fucking loving this. I know, that's a crazy idea. If New Japan had TNA's production values, like I'm not shitting you. I thought the debuts in the main worked, and obviously for video viewers, you can see that I've got the newly it's Jack Perry channeling his dad in Oz kind of vibes here with a long heavy beard on him. He can grow the beard. Is he going to get buried behind a wall? Like, sorry, spoiler alert for a show that's out over 20 years ago on there. But yeah, honestly to God, like, it was, he was very much stolen from Chris Jericho, I suppose, to go into that as well. But, you know, when I saw, I had it spoilt for me beforehand because I saw pictures, I was like, fucking hell. And they had one of those classic wrestling contracts that just makes sure it has the two or three words that you need to remember. And in this case, an AEW contract, just so you could make absolutely clear he just wasn't ripping up a fucking essay that he'd written in school.
Against my better judgment, I really enjoyed this. It was a genuine holy shit moment. I hadn't even had a beer. I was fully sober watching these shows at like 4 a.m. It probably was at this point. Later than that, I think it was. I don't know. Can't remember now. But you are right. It was after that shit show of like, speaking of production, Battle of the Belts and Tony Khan up to his old tricks. We're gonna get to that in a minute. After that match, the bell had just rang. It just finished, and then that's when like I say, loose cannon Jack Perry appeared on screen, and it was genuinely, and it was like, whoa, like, it caught me by surprise. It took me back right away. I had the volume up and I was watching it, and thought he did well. As far as like carrying it off, it had that degree of believability, which, half a second's thought tells you who's New Japan's partner again. Oh yeah, it's AEW. But it's still, I know a few people will work by it and believed it, but at least you had a plausible deniability, I suppose, is what I'm saying. I had a little bit of credibility, and it was cool. It was genuinely was. It felt like a shocking moment, and like you say, him pulling the contract out immediately, I kind of got onto what it was going to be. But that was a good touch. They should have done that. And the smartest thing they can do now is just never give him a microphone, because unfortunately the lad's going to talk. That's going to ruin it all. But as far as the limited stuff that we got from him, it was very exciting. Even I've gone wild on the Discord, JP. I was like, what they should have done? Should have made him the devil as well. Yeah, Jungle Boy is the devil with a way better than Adam Cole. Actually, he can fucking wrestle. But he's also had the motivation to do it too. You would think, in a kayfabe sense. Oh well, boat's gone. Don't care. That story's dead. Maybe it's best he's not. But yeah, very interesting thing to do. And Tony Khan fucking loved the Pillman angles back in the day. So he'll be loving this too, and bang up for it. So. There we go. Off to the races. Also, if you can pull it off, God love him. We'll see. But as a start, I'm quite excited about it. It's for better judgment.
It's as good a start as you're going to get. And it was a good place to do it. Because obviously, if you do this in Japan, no one knows who he is, really, to any meaningful level. You do it in the States, you at least get that kind of a buzz. They tried this with Sammy Guevara, remember, going to Impact when they had that very short-lived partnership in the end. And it fucked up, and he didn't go anywhere. And it made you, just simply because of the Impact booking, they were like going to book him to lose in a triple threat match. It was like, and we were saying, at that point they weren't doing fucking anything, and it was still COVID in front of like empty. It was like, well, just go with Sammy Guevara. He's been on the bigger show. You might as well do something with him if you've got him on loan. You could at least do something exciting. And then we thought you'd bring him in as a bigger star. Well, we'll see if this is gonna end up happening with Jack Perry. Now, a lot of it's going to depend on what happens in the ring, where that takes place. I assume it's going to be that Chicago show, which is being held at a venue that's held AEW pay-per-views in the Wintrust Arena in Chicago. And they're loading it up, as we'll talk about later on as well. But it was a lot more fun, even if it's effectively rehash of other stuff, of other angles you've seen wrestlers do when they turn up somewhere, like the idea of them wearing the mask. I did think to myself, knowing what was going to happen, I was like, Shota Umino spending a long time thanking fans in, sticking with them. But then in New Japan shows, they do that. They do just follow them around. They don't cut to backstage segments and stuff like that. So just the actual delivery of it. And the match that happened beforehand, like whether or not it works, isn't like, there's so many variables for this fucking up. But this is as good as they could have done as a start. But he wasn't the only star, or the only person he kind of came out of that match that I think had people talking. Did you watch the match, the opener for this? Did you see, fucking Jacob Fatu, that crowd like felt like they were kind of like, because like I say, the sound mixing not great as always, but you could hear the crowd for Jacob Fatu and they were loving it. And he went in there, and this is a 6-man with he's teaming with Fred Rosser and Shota Umino against Team Filthy, for God's sakes. They fucking loved him. And they were like all over it as well. And, you know, pop-up Samoan drop, did like, you know, the bloody Fosbury flop to the floor, did all sorts of it. Just got his shit in straight away. And it made it feel like, okay, he won't have signed a contract with New Japan or anything else, but this is very much like a calling card to bigger companies of, hello, I'm a Samoan who can work really well. There's a couple of places where obviously they're always going to need people like that in the company. Looking at you, WWE, and you're thinking to yourself, well, he could have done a lot worse. Of like, yeah, he can be like Solo Sikoa, but actually do a lot of shit as opposed to Solo Sikoa. And I thought he came across really well here, and it livened up the crowd. And I think this angle livened up the crowd, and that was a really good move, because I think this crowd stayed, even if you couldn't hear him, it stayed hot throughout the night.
It felt like a hot show, like Simon jokes there. And you quote before, New Japan did the mistakes; they didn't do better. I got what you meant, JP. A couple of double negatives in there, but
apologies.
but genuinely, like they did, like, and that was a big part of it. Having hot debuts, like having, obviously, you know, Impact haven't got access to a Jack Perry, and I think their AEW relationship is quite frosty these days. And also, the New Japan show was happening at the same time as their show, so you know, there's certain things they couldn't do. But just having that made it feel like quite exciting. Having that, having Mustafa Ali, and you know, whenever you think about, don't know what you think about his presidential kind of thing that he's doing for a character. It's a bit Sean O'Hare for me. Works well for the vignettes, doesn't necessarily work when it comes to actually performing a character in wrestling matches. I just can't see it. I saw his entrance from GCW where he came out with all the different blokes in the suits type of thing, and it was like, okay, maybe should have left that for the videos, mate. Maybe we should have saved that one. But like, genuinely, like, he's still. I say all that to say the video was very well done, and you know, him and Hiromu as a match does immediately define him as a certain level, which is probably a junior, but that's fine. Gives him an interesting flash slot in New Japan, and you know, a lane to be in where he'll probably be featured. That felt cool and fresh as well, and I felt like got a good reaction, and he comes across as a star. Again, whether it'll translate once the bell rings with this new character, there's definitely something there, and it added to just the overall excitement level on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, God, this is the thing about Mustafa Ali coming in is you just thought, okay, he's got this. He's got the bit between his teeth, clearly, and he's wanting to work absolutely everywhere. I'm not mad on the presidential stuff, but in terms of how he delivers his promo and his cadence, he's enough of a character, and you've enough confidence in his work that he's going to be backing it up. And it's interesting in there straight away against Hiromu. And again, if you're bringing him straight into New Japan, how much is he going to end up meaning? However, him against Hiromu as a novelty match for the Chicago show, which is the thing I came away liking it. It was like they were already building big to their next show, and putting him on there, that is going to kind of work. And he's already got a fucking packed schedule between now and April, which, you know, God, we're talking the guts are 3 months away at this stage at time of recording. But I'm, like you, I'm kind of enthused as much as anything else. I mean, so yeah, we'll wait and see for this. You think he's going over as well, but it's Hiromu in 2024 as well, which isn't necessarily particularly exciting. But there's a novelty value to that match, which at least they get. If you want to sell tickets, you're offering fresh matchups. Mustafa Ali and Hiromu is a fresh matchup, if nothing else. Somebody will tell me now in the Discord or in the chat here that they wrestled once
in Chicago somewhere.
When Hiromu, yeah, exactly. When Hiromu was on excursion or something along those lines.
What was his name then? Kamatachi, was that his name? Back then.
Yeah, it was, yeah. He always matched with Dragon Lee.
Yeah, big on the ROH shows. In other big, not really debut. Well, yeah, it was, I suppose, a debut. Matt Riddle was also on the show. Team with Jeff Cobb. He was over, and not the only problematic man on either of the shows we're about to talk about that was unfortunately over on the show. And yeah, we should have guessed Jeff Cobb was going to be his partner. That probably made sense, being in the California area as well. I thought Bad Dude Tito looked good in that match. That's a positive. I'll throw out there. He continues to get better and better. Very much enjoyed him. And of course, Zack Sabre Jr., man of values. Happy to work with Riddle on the other side of the ring. But any notes on that or the rest of the undercard before we get into the big three matches, I suppose?
So I've got notes, little brief notes on like some of the matches on the build up to it. For that tag match, it's probably like it was. I did note to myself, there is a time that Matt Riddle in New Japan I would have been incredibly excited by. And they mentioned what was kind of his one appearance in a Global Wars show that we saw in Walthamstow, I think it was. But like that ship has sailed, but also there's just things about his general moveset that isn't particularly exciting. And he's like, there's stuff there that I'm not like, I don't know, just not keen on. And for all the various reasons that we've spoken about, like as him as a person. So yeah, that one was, I mean, again, for that crowd, he was over to them, wasn't he? Julia Trishadora, I wanted to say, okay, it wasn't like it was bad, but there is a thing about Julia outside of Stardom.
And it's Bound for Glory, hard to kill, but it fit on Hard to Kill that match. I gave it my full attention there. I was like, I was starting to get a bit sleepy. I was no, I want to see what the fuss is all about with Julia. I've seen a handful of her matches. Hear good things about Trishadora as well. I think we've seen a couple of hers. Let's see. Yeah, wasn't really much to see.
And I think that's the thing it's. I've seen Julia have great matches in Stardom. I haven't seen absolutely tons of them, but I know there's enough there for you to be confident in the body of work. It's taking her out of that environment. Is it going to work? And so far, it isn't really there. Trishadora, I kind of looked at her and I went, you put her in MLW, you put her in TNA, and it's kind of fine, but it's not high-level work in there. She's not ready for the kind of big leagues. And so there's all these stories about Julia, about the fact that AEW aren't interested in her, which, given the amount of other people they've signed who aren't as good as her, they've gotten rid. But the idea of her being the second coming, I don't know whether or not, if we're going to be brutal about it, that's based on she's good in the ring and she has a look. And so therefore you put those two things together, there's star potential there. But she doesn't feel as special or as this kind of like almost mythical figure as I think Julia felt for a while when she was having like a big breakthroughs in Stardom of look at her. Not only does she have a really distinctive look that is going to be really appealing in a number of ways, but she's also great in ring. You're not seeing any of this stuff, I think, with her as New Japan Women's Champion, whether it's actually on Stardom shows as well for the most part. But I don't think they've made necessarily good matchups. They've not put them in like kind of big, high distinctive roles. So yeah, that was a match as much as anything else, rather like the tag match in there. But I actually thought it kind of over delivered because it went quickly enough. But like, and Hikuleo's certainly been doing a bit of weights in there in the meantime. But it's interesting that ELP has to basically do most of the actual wrestling there as well. I made some notes here on even TJP. I don't understand this Aswang character. I thought it was Aswad first of all. That I started thinking of. I don't know if you remember them, the kind of reggae band from the early 90s. We should come out to there as well. He is a good wrestler. whether or not, I'm not going to ask his opinions on whether or not he thinks the earth is flat, but he is a really good wrestler and he will end up with a junior title run. It was a match for what it was, but he does make the most of what is there. Having a lucha match on the card, it's never going to hurt. And Volador delivers an absolute cracking running Canadian destroyer, which he did to Rocky Romero here. And if you're wanting to put on a bit of like variety onto the show, you could do a lot worse than have that. And I think that's the thing. And I suppose Eddie Kingston, Gabriel Kidd, I've written down here, sweary chop exchanges, but with bad sound design, because that's what they are. They swear at each other. They do strike exchanges. They'll swear at each other some more. They'll brawl around the ring. They'll do a couple of suplexes. They'll show how hard they are. They'll swear some more. They'll do some more chops. And then they both got counted out.
Yeah. I thought I was torn on this one. I get Gabe Kidd's one, but I can't settle my opinion on. He just comes across a bit tryhard and cringe to me a lot of the time.
He does, mate.
I'm not going to say more than that. But, like, I could see it's a bit like the Osprey thing, like when Osprey leans into the geezer stuff. It's like, the American audience laps it up, because it's like, oh, he's saying bruv, isn't that like unique? And it's like, we all know Osprey's not really like that, and a lot of it feels put on with Gabe Kidd. But yeah, good chemistry with Kingston. I would say I mostly enjoyed it. I actually thought the finish was quite clever with him, saying "fuck you," is that all you got, Kingston, or whatever he said on the mic when he was laid out on the outside, getting Kingston to come back, to not get back in the ring on 18 and getting the double count out. It was just ruined a bit by, like, literally, I'm not Jamesy here with selling, but like 5 seconds later, he's sprinting around like they literally did like a full lap of the ring. And it was like, you couldn't get up a couple of seconds ago. That was the whole point of the finish. You couldn't get up, so you used your last dying breath to call Kingston a cunt and get him to stop going in the ring. Like, at least sell that for a little bit to make the finish work. But I did think it was a good idea in isolation. I kind of liked it, and you believe that there's like and it made sense when Kingston came out at the end of the show that he'd come out, because it feels like there's a real beef there with him in the Bullet Club War Dogs, as much as I dislike that concept. But yeah, there was enough to like about the match, but it was, like I say, little bit of a negative at the end there. But yeah, I think the main talking point probably is the last two matches. Moxley Shingo and Okada Osprey. Again, Okada Osprey had the big angle with War Dogs at the end, but we did get the nice moment with Osprey getting to say his proper farewell to New Japan. Okada seemed genuine. It seemed genuine, like the emotion, because obviously Okada's had the gigantic to do with Osprey's development as well. But yeah, thought that was a cracker of a match, Okada Osprey.
Oh,
yeah, Moxley Shingo as well. Just a great little one too. As a final two.
Quite often on these New Japan US shows, they haven't really delivered in main events. It feels like stuff that feels like it should be special hasn't ended up being as special as it should be. These two felt special, a special match. Now, they're two very different matches. If you ask me which one I enjoyed more, it was probably Shingo and Moxley, because there's a novelty value in that match alone. And we've seen, well, as they talk about in the video, we've seen Okada Osprey was like 9 times up to this stage. So Shingo and Moxley, with Moxley in jeans and a t-shirt, like, it's like, okay, all right, this is going to be a lot more fun. And they went fucking hell for leather. But like the Osprey, to go back onto the Osprey Okada match for there, I think my feelings were, this is that really good exhibition match that you get, that like effectively there isn't really stakes at place. One of them's definitely leaving, the other one we don't know, but at the same time, the one who's definitely leaving is probably going to be the one who loses. And they are clever enough to have their kind of big spots really worked out, whether it's the drop kick countering the hidden blade and Okada hitting a Stormbreaker, and those kind of big hits. Yeah, it is a bit greatest hits. It wasn't anything I thought that was crazily distinctive, but done really well, because they're two like excellent professional wrestlers. Like, what the fuck would you expect from them necessarily? And it delivered what that crowd wanted. And if you wanted something that stuck out from the match before, and I think this is why these two work so well as a companion piece, because they're entirely different matches. And, with I don't know if there's anything more you want to add necessarily to Okada Ospreay in particular, but Shingo Moxley had the kind of crazy balls to the wall, no DQ stuff that if you actually did it in Japan, for the most part, tends to be quite shit in New Japan. But here, it worked and was very well spaced out because both these matches are 25 minutes plus as well. So you are getting.
I felt it a bit more in a Okada Ospreay. Like Moxley Shingo, I think if I was maybe more invested in the feud, and I mean, I say that about most times Moxley does a match like this. The stakes never feel like they live up to the level of violence that Moxley gives it, but that's just Moxley. That's why people love him. And it did make for, an entertaining spectacle. It definitely held my attention better than Okada Ospreay did in the early stages, because I was one of them. I read people going, we were 20 minutes in, and I couldn't even believe it when I looked at my clock. I was like, no, I knew we were 20 minutes in, because I always do when it comes to these big Okada epics. And like you say, the fact that it was an exhibition was working against it. But then it's so good that it's always going to work in the end, isn't it? And it got me in the end. And I think a lot of that was the fact that it was like, oh, this is the last time, probably, or at least the commentary did a good. They're both going to be in AEW at point, so probably shouldn't even say it's going to be the last time. But it felt like the last time proper New Japan main event you're going to get, at least between these two. And yeah, it kind of felt cool seeing them going back and forth with those spots. It felt like I honestly did buy, because I'd not read the spoilers as who was going over. I probably should just assume the card was going over, consider Ospreay's going out. But there's still that part of me that, with their story over the years, wants to see Ospreay get that win over Okada one more time. So I kind of bought the near falls near the end, and then it all made clear sense when Okada went over relatively clean. And yeah, I just thought it was a good bit of business altogether, and just a great 1-2 matches. I wouldn't go crazy high on either of them, as much. I'd probably go 4.25 a piece. Maybe you could force my hand to 4.5 on the Moxley match, or maybe on the main. I don't know. They're both somewhere in the middle. But stronger than anything else I watched this weekend as far as matches go. And it felt like Karen puts it beautifully there in the YouTube chat. Them closing the book on the last 8 years together. It felt like I said on the preview, what a cool thing it is that Ospreay, the British indie wrestler that we all kind of saw something in, went to New Japan and came out the rest of the year that he is today. And that's, in a way, the story they told, because Okada's such a gigantic part of that story, being his match in Rev Pro, which got him into New Japan in the first place, and being a big part of Chaos until he got his own stable. All of that, you could feel it in their interactions and in the way they did the nice little emotional segment that got ruined maybe a few seconds too early for my liking by the War Dogs.
Yeah, that bit I wasn't necessarily as mad about, and and I know they've got a cage match they want to build.
Got a cage match to sell, I get it.
Yeah, so that's the reason why we end up in that neck of the woods. But I think the way almost that I'm going to be thinking of the show is not necessarily these matches in isolation, although they're very, very fun and they're definitely the best things I saw this weekend. But it was more that it was two good, high quality matches with four of the best wrestlers in the world, but they're two very different matches. And I think that was the thing that at least kept me going during Okada Ospreay, is knowing what I'd seen before with Shingo and Moxley. And this was today, I'm trying to fit it in, and I'm thinking, I want to see all of this show. And then I see this Shingo Moxley match, and I was like, geez, that was better than what I thought it was. And I was like, okay, we've got this other. I was a bit scared as well, because it said like an hour in the running time. I went, oh Christ, like, how long does this go? But in the end, it delivered all of the things it needed to. And if this is the way they're going to start off, with them being in the US, this was as good a start. And this is as positive as I've been on New Japan in fucking how long? I can't think of the last time we have been as positive on a podcast about New Japan and for what they did. And it was nothing really to do with the majority of their Japanese roster. I did come away thinking, here's a shout. Let's get Tom Lawler on commentary. You're not going to be using him as a wrestler. And I know he wasn't always able to necessarily talk as much, but I think in the main, he's got enough of a presence and there's enough to work with that you can actually get him on board as being like an interesting color commentator. And he's certainly funny enough. So you could throw that in there as well. And Walker Stewart, the hope is he grows out of the cliches. That would be the thing, because there's a lot of that kind of wrestling commentary cliche talk that he rolls out.
His chat GPT is a commentator, isn't he? He's an AI commentator. I've just realised that's what he is. You put a load of commentators' voices into AI and then told it to just say things that you're supposed to say as a commentator. You'd come up with him and it'd have the odd factual error. Yeah, so for that reason, it'd have the odd factual error that it needs correcting on. Again, like AI will be, it'll throw something in you. Well, that's totally wrong. It's fucked that up. That's what he is. Yeah, I know you're higher on Vader Scott than me. I think she's shite. But either way, they were all just too loud.
Is she any worse than that Irish bloke on bloody SmackDown or wherever it is? Is he really any worse than him? It's really. He does MLS games apparently. Fucking Apple TV again. Sorry to bring it up for the IWC streaming service, but he's on there.
Oh wow!
I'm interested to see how good a football commentator is he, because if he sounds like he does with the wrestling, people get angry at Sam Matterface, and fuck me, this would be whole other level stuff.
Well, on that note, unless you got anything else on New Japan, very strong show. Good to be a little bit positive about New Japan after maybe not expecting so much. We should, and I'm actually quite shocked it's this late in the show. Talk some AEW. Not a hugely noteworthy weekend with AEW. We got a Collision to talk about. We got a bit of Battle of the Belt to talk about. Might throw a couple of Rampage thoughts in there as well as a preview of Dynamite. But yeah, we'll start with Collision. For me, it was a show. Of the three that I was kind of splitting my attention across on Saturday Night, Collision was probably the lesser, but still solid. It's a weird show right now, Collision, in that like there's nothing about Collision that is anything you need to go out your way and watch. And there's nothing about Collision that makes you think, okay, I need to, if you haven't seen it, recommend it to people to go and watch. Maybe the main event. If you haven't seen House of Black against FTR and Daniel Garcia, maybe you should see that. Outside of that, it's a pretty good show, but an uneventful one. I think the Adam Copeland series I'm higher on this week, coming out of Collision. I think last week it was just funny to kind of make fun of our mate Garrison. Like he, didn't particularly do well in the spot. Feel like Moriarty did this week, so at least there's that. I get what they're doing with it. It's kind of like it's not quite on the level of Bryan and Punk working their way through the young roster. But as with most things, Cope, I'd say his heart's in the right place. I don't think he's doing it to. I've seen really fucking ridiculous takes out there of, oh, he's just going to go over all these young wrestlers. I mean, the lads he's going over aren't getting TV time for the. It'll be fucking Lee Johnson next week. It's like we're not talking high level guys that he's working here. They are absolutely people that it does them good to be in there with a veteran, even if it's Cope, who I don't rate. I actually kind of enjoy it. It's like a nice little fresh thing you can do in Collision each week. It's more interesting than, the inevitable Christian Cage match, which he did do a promo building up on as well. But yeah, I thought that was strong enough. Fun is probably the word. Damn, with faint praise. Hangman going over JD Drake again. Fun little functional match with Hangman in the hometown. Like that. Hook looking strong before Dynamite this week. Going over Kevin Matthews. That was good stuff. Deonna Purrazzo going over strong. There's a pattern here, JP. A lot of solid little squash level-ish matches, or maybe like a step up from squash. Good establishing matches, just a lot of them across a 2-hour show, which as much as you can, I think we should praise from just a functional booking point of view. Like I said at the top, doesn't necessarily make the most compelling show, but certainly watchable was Collision this week.
Oh, it's very watchable. There was nothing about this show that I came away disliking, but like you, it feels very number two, and I don't mean that in a literally number two type way, as in I'm saying it's shit, but it's more the sense that it certainly isn't got anywhere near the value of what Dynamite has. The Dynamite is still the place where all the big stuff's going to happen, and so and I think the thing with Adam Copeland is the novelty of him wrestling these people who it's like, okay, because these are the fresh matchups that I spoke about, and then they, when they were going into a Christian Cage feud straight away in there. but it is, you know, we're at a Rampage level when you've got the Ring of Honor World 6-man tag team championships being defended on it. That's always the stuff. Dustin Rhodes versus Willie Mack, like you've pointed out on here, loads of these kind of squash matches. One point I did want to raise about it: JD Drake makes the absolute most of his time whenever he does appear on TV. I will say that about him, and about generally when I've seen the Workhorsemen in general. But yeah, it was like the one big match on it was the what is to be expected on Collision, and I'm probably not. I don't want to say that it isn't a good match or anything like that. I've seen a lot of combinations of House of Black and FTR now, and I think that's probably where the only issue is for me. Is it inevitably feels like, and maybe it's the Mandela effect, and they've only had like 2 or 3 of these matches, but it feels like I've sat through quite a lot more than that for them as well. And it just
been
makes
going on a while because they were going to
Yeah.
align with them, and now they're feuding with
bit
them. And stuff.
spinning heels, isn't it? It's
Yeah, and it's become a bit of a Collision staple. But I thought it was really good. Like, it was funny. There were a few points like to point where things were on the show. I'm almost certain if it wasn't this, it was something else boring. But I'm pretty sure when Rhino was trotted out was when that Mogul Embassy Lance Archer Righteous match was. If it wasn't that, it was something like that going on Impact, and it was one of them. But it was like on TNA, sorry. It was like, can't even switch the channel here. it's boring on both channels, and then they both finished at exactly the same time, which was like a troll job on me as the audience. And the flip side happened: House of Black and FTR. That 6-man match, is that the main event on Collision, was up against the multi-person tag on TNA, and I did end up rewatching the tail end of Collision, so I've seen it in full since. But just in flipping back and forth, it was so interesting here, like that multi-person tag on it, back not really on TNA, not really getting a great reaction, and it was red hot on Collision, and that's the big thing you can say about it. It really worked well as the babies versus the heels, almost traditional Saturday night tag. I thought Daniel Garcia, you know, his focus on TV, it's something he said himself in one of his promos, or I think he said that at the presser next to Tony Khan, has been massive for him. Just being on TV this much this last while has been massive for him. You know, daft spots on tables or not. I thought he was great as FTR's little buddy. Just getting back to the old gear and stuff, getting back to Red Death, and let's get going with Daniel Garcia. I don't know where the Matt Menard stuff is going with the commentary. Presume one of them turns at some point or something, unless he's just going to mate with his commentary on his matches, and that's just a part of the Daniel Garcia gimmick going forward. I don't really know. That's all a bit odd, and the angle afterwards was, you know, indicated a bit more of the same, which I'm guessing you're not hugely excited about. But yeah, those are really good TV tag main events, and yeah, it's the thing from the show that I'd say is most worth going out your way to watch. Good stuff, really. But yeah, outside that, not really. I think the most notable thing is unless you've got anything else, was the bleed into the Battle of the Belts. We'll get into this week's upcoming Dynamite in a little bit. And yeah, if you haven't heard the weekend show or the full Dynamite review that we did on the weekend show, which is available on YouTube, free for all. If you look on the Grapple YouTube, could do with a few more subscribers. So check that out there if you're after our full Dynamite thoughts from last week. We were very, very, very positive on at least the first hour of last week's Dynamite. And this week's Dynamite looks solid enough coming already. Gotta say the negative, which was the negative of Dynamite as well, was the way they got to battle the belts here, and the way they did this fight. I mean, it's like all the few things we talked about on the show today. Completely avoiding all the real life issues, which we shouldn't, by the way. Was it good, quote unquote? Yes, you know, it was a good brawl. Jericho and Sammy Guevara versus Big Bill and Ricky Starks. But similar to what we moaned about on Dynamite with them blaring fucking Fozzy so that Jericho could make the reaction without getting booed, there were 2 more instances of that across these 2 shows. On Collision, there was a promo backstage with Jericho and Sammy Guevara, where they were either playing different crowd audio than was happening live, or, and what was probably most likely, is they just weren't showing the interview to the live crowd, so the crowd were reacting to something else that was going on in the ring, which was obvious as fuck, I suppose, if you're listening for it, so maybe not that obvious, but for those of us who are used to it, you could tell it was a purposeful decision, because they didn't want a live crowd reaction for Jericho. And what's the other way you can get around the live crowd reaction? do the majority of the match backstage, which felt like a very purposeful decision for it. It did work. I'm not going to give them credit for that working. It's a murky, horrible business they're in right now with Jericho. There were a few smattering abused when he came out, but they mostly got away with it, if that's the word you want to use. But yeah, match could be as good as it wants. JP, for me, the whole thing still continues to feel extremely dirty and seedy, very, very WWE adjacent in a week where Tony Khan's throwing more pelters at WWE. It felt like something they would do, as far as like Vince McMahon doctrine over the last 20 years of muting his own crowds and sweetening crowd noise and telling them who to cheer and boo. That's what this feels like, except for a much more serious issue than we're normally even talking about on the other channel. Just all a bit gross for me, JP, and it makes it hard for me to, I just can't actually what the fuck. Maybe I should just be glad Jericho didn't win the tag belts, because at least maybe he's going to fuck off for a bit now. Fozzy Tour and fucking Boat and whatever else. We can be rid of him at least for a while. But he's going to come back, and they're going to be playing. They're going to be playing more of these games. And yeah, maybe I'm naive. I expected better of AEW.
Fozzy Tour of fucking Boat. I just love that as a phrase, but it's very, very true. Yeah, the first bit of my notes that I've written about here was the problem was the match in and of itself in a vacuum. If you just watch it as a match, it's very, very fun. And I didn't like even writing that down, because I didn't want to see this as a match. This is one thing that AEW are good at, is these kind of backstage arena brawls and knowing how to kind of get enough jokes in there. But we spoke about this on the weekend show, and I think it was one of the things that said, I'll watch them. They'll start in the back and then they'll go through the crowd. Why? Because their first objective is to try and protect Chris Jericho. That's what this is. This is about protecting him as much as anything else. I think if I want to think of an outcome that's not the best case scenario out of all of this, is that Big Bill and Ricky Starks didn't lose anything. That's not what we should come out thinking about it. But by the end, I thought they didn't lose anything, at least. And I thought, okay, and I can kind of live with that. And we move on. And them as challengers have kind of gone away. But it's the hoops they're jumping through to make sure that Chris Jericho does not come across bad in any way, shape, or form. Because that is the priority. And that makes you think, well, your priorities, you need to fucking look at them, like in a serious way. And they're not. And what it is, no, we're protecting our mate. But above all else, that's what we're doing. We're not going to listen to anything else. We're not going to look at things. We're not going to ask harder, deeper questions about like what has possibly gone on under our roof or anything else. No, we're going to protect him. And we're going to protect his ego by making sure he isn't booed. And you could hear the boos when they came through into the crowd, but there's probably a feeling of, at the end of it, we got away with it. Or he's going to try and do the same thing again, but we're going to have the Callis family. So I thought, well, good luck to Keshta. This is like, it would be like the death knell for you being kind of overshadowed in this, because that's the other thing in this. We've complained about him overshadowing like the other wrestler in all of the feuds. Whether or not he loses or not, it always ultimately is about him. And guess what? In a different way, it's still all about him. And in terms of this match, it was still all about him. It was worked and booked in a way, ultimately, to protect him from being booed. So then people wouldn't question it. And the casual audience going, why is he being like, what's happened here? Why is the crowd really hate him? All of these things, just to avoid all of that stuff. And it's just a bit fucking tiresome. And like you say, he's like, you're hoping he just goes away, because he isn't someone who's, for me, an essential part of AEW TV. Being completely amoral and saying, no, thinking anything, do you need him on TV? Is he worth protecting in this way? No. Is Big Bill and Ricky Starks worth protecting? Yeah. Because they represent the future. And in one of them, in Big Bill, is someone who they've managed to make really take on the good work that came on in TNA and do something like kind of good with them at this point. But yeah, as good as the match was worked, I didn't enjoy it. And I didn't enjoy it because of him. And I had these were the things I was thinking about when watching the match, when I should have been making other notes and other bits. But there you go.
Yeah, and he's gonna continue. You'll get to hide behind this as well, and we maybe fell into the trap as well because the conversation isn't about Chris Jericho anymore and what he did or didn't do, and whether there was or there wasn't an investigation, which the company hasn't been transparent about. It's just about the company being either incompetent or the company being, doing stuff like this and just being, don't want to say dishonest, but being dishonest and playing with crowd reactions and trying to get around it. And the conversation becomes about that and rather than him. And he continues to hide in plain sight.
Yeah.
And he's got him. And that's the sad part of this story. Battle of Belts elsewhere. I didn't have a huge amount of notes on really. This week's Dynamite coming up though. Looks like it be fun. Unless you've got anything else, JP, on the contents of Battle of the Belts or Rampage this week. I don't.
I don't. No.
Dynamite this week.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Sorry, you keep seeming like you've got something to say. What, do you?
No, I haven't. Honestly, it's me worrying about me cutting some of these bastard websites. My fucking browser decided to go berserk.
Yeah, we've lost you again.
All right, there we go.
Anyway, Dynamite this week, professional podcasters. Samoa Joe, Hook, we have Christian Cage versus Dustin Rhodes for the TNT title in one of the famous James Invitationals. We have Brian Cage, Toliana, and Bishop Corn, your boys, against Jay White, Austin Gunn, and Colton Gunn for the ROH six-man titles. And we have the Young Bucks apparently speaking, so we're going to get some payoff on the Sting and Darby angle, JP. I do find that the stuff with like the Acclaimed and the Guns, like I don't really understand where that's going or why we're doing that or why, the Acclaimed would trust the Guns after everything they've done with that story. I just don't see a positive endpoint for that. Is it a match with the Undisputed Kingdom? It's been very weird, creatively, all of that stuff. Samoa Joe Hook, I'm excited for. I think they did a good job last week of, like I say, there was probably one way to do Joe Hook, but also not to find Joe down. And they did that. They threaded that needle, as we talked about on Dynamite last week, in having Hangman and Swerve come out too. So it was clear main eventers also want Joe's title. It's not just we're immediately going to lower level defenses. It made Joe feel like a marked man. Like I said on the YouTube thumbnail, it was a red hot start for me for the Samoa Joe title run. Been a bit of conversation on this on the Discord the last couple of days, and that I do kind of get that. Yeah, they probably do need to do in a world where Tony Khan is making fun of Jinder Mahal getting WWE title shots. They probably do need to justify Hangman Page being in that picture, considering his current win-loss record, specifically against Swerve. But I've got confidence they'll put that right, and presumably there'll be more coming with them on Dynamite as well. But yeah, strong Joe win over Hook, I expect, JP. Good performance for Hook, and maybe shenanigans with Hangman and Swerve after, which I would very much welcome.
I'm down with all of that, and I think as long as Joe Hook involves like Hook getting in some suplexes in on Joe, and there being some sort of Taz reference as well in there at the same time, we get a bit of that in there. And Taz, for example, like nearly losing his shit because his son might become a world champion and whatnot. I think there's some interesting stuff they can do there. Obviously, Joe wins, but I think just don't make this into a long, drawn out epic. Whatever you do, for the love of God, and I don't think they will. I think if they're smart about this, like we spoke about this before with Joe after he's won the title, you book him like he's Taz, ironically, in ECW, and you just have these kind of like short, impactful matches that get the most with a varied range of opponents. And I think if you're thinking about like Hooker's first challenger, fine, because we know we're getting the bigger dogs down the road. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that, as well as Christian Cage and Dustin Rhodes. Again, combined age of over 100. Like second time round, and the last time they had that match between between Cope and Christian Cage, it was all right. So I think this time round it'll be okay. It always makes me wonder, is there going to be a bidding war for Dustin Rhodes? Like at some stage when his contract comes up,
follow Cody over, maybe that
you'd bring him in, wouldn't you?
come, yeah. Maybe, I don't know. He's had so many WWE runs, though. Maybe there is still gas in
Not
the
as gold dust.
Yeah, maybe he could do something akin to what he's doing here.
Yeah.
Maybe. Any expectations for the Young Bucks promo? What do you think they'll turn you around after Dynamite? Mustaches, suits, bit of a wink and nods. Are you expecting that? I don't think Sting and Darby will be on the show after last week's performance. Give Sting a few weeks off. Basically, give him off till the pay-per-view, I think, at this point. Wrap the poor fella in cotton wool. He should not take any more bumps before the pay-per-view itself at this point. After how fucking wild and amazing last week was. But yeah, presumably the way they've advertised that your Bucks aren't going to be in the building, it's tough to get all the members of the elite in the building for any given Dynamite. So I think it's going to be a pre-tape promo. I guess we'll see.
I think it's going to be full of snark, like it always is. While simultaneously we hear stories about how upset they are while being a pair of gobby, sarky bastards. And I go, yeah, one thing doesn't really fit the other here. So do I expect to be turned around? No, because it would require, like, where's the level of like reinvention going to be here? I think that's where I kind of am a bit more of a that's where my skepticism really comes into the fray here. So yeah, I'm not holding out any like kind of expectations it's going to be an absolute killer promo, because I don't know what it is. They're still using the same theme music. It's just a shave and a fucking suit does not a reinvention make, does it? I can have a shave and wear a suit and it just looks like I'm off to court. So I don't know, like, I'm not going to suddenly think, oh yeah, the Young Bucks, they're back on form now. So yeah, maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised, but I'm going to guess that's not going to be the case.
I'm still into the match. My only worry is they will make me less interested in the match than just the idea of it. Bucks versus Sting and Darby, I'm definitely more up for than yourself. But yeah, the only way it can be down with those two and their promo style, and so we'll see how it goes. But I'm willing to be open-minded. We'll see if they change my mind for positive or negative. Any other happenings you're expecting on Dynamite following last week? The next chapter in the Great Undisputed Kingdom story, JP. Maybe we'll get a little bit of that. What will Wardlow wear to TV this week? Pair of basketball shorts and a vest, some
dressing gown,
dressing gown,
sliders, t-shirt. Even more like he's going to the corner shop, and a Bombay bad boy, like just for him to be fucking eating while he's in full student mode. Might as well have a fucking looks like a monster and a PS5 controller in his pocket. Like, why not? Like, I think that's the route we're going down on here. It's man on gardening leave is kind of how he's got. That's the look he's going for at the moment. I mean, yeah, it looks like, I was going to say it was one of the collision notes. It's like Roderick Strong is winning that international title, isn't he? It feels like they're going to go to him because they need to have someone in that stable actually kind of winning stuff. Andy says there, spliff hanging out of his mouth. Yeah. He would do. He's not doing the training he should be doing anyway. You could easily see that being the case. But yeah, thinking of, that's certainly one of the what I tell you what won't happen on Dynamite. It says Mercedes Moné won't turn up. Apparently she was at TNA, wasn't she, this week? Fucking New Japan.
Yeah.
Why? They live in Vegas. Like, was it to see Trinity, or like what, welcoming him back? It's very confusing, isn't it, with this? But I do love how Bailey gives zero fucks for turning up at other shows.
You're right behind the is it the French commentary or the Spanish commentary they have? You're right behind the desk, so they were definitely in danger of
JF, right?
Yeah, if in proper TNA form, they could have put them on telly like they did that Highlander, Robbie What's-His-Face, and got him sacked from WWE. We're a different world now. Hopefully, we don't get any of that. But yeah,
Mercedes and Pam in big fucking big caption underneath them.
Pam. On that note, unless you got any more on AEW, pretty quiet week for AEW. I'm hoping for another great Dynamite like last week. Like I say, can't say enough how much I enjoyed that first hour last week. Throw a random hangman match in. Come on, give me that. Cook that right to my veins. Give the lads some more wins. I'll take that. But again, one awful Dynamite thoughts. YouTube.com/@grapple for free for everybody. But yeah, anything else you've watched this week, JP? I know there was something you tried to watch.
Well, and for those of you who've got access to the run sheet for this will have seen it. I did put in a link. Oh, it's Go Shiozaki versus Keno. Noah Star Navigation that was happening at Kurikan Hall. And I put it on. I started to watch. I went, the commentary's a bit funny here because I can hear the English commentators on this because it was on YouTube. I might as well say the name of the bloke, Sir Anime. And then it was like I could hear the Japanese commentators and the English commentators at the same time. Went, all right, this is going to be a bit tricky. And then out of nowhere, there's just some dubbed Russian bloke talking. One bloke. But he sounded like he was like miles away. I went, right, now I'm really zoning out of this. And then I had to put on the closed captions to go, what language is this? Because this is not Japanese. I've had enough Japanese over the years to at least have a semblance of when I can hear it being spoken. No, it's Russian. No real reason. Unless Noah is massive in Russia, in which case, fucking go for it. Like they might as well. And so it completely took me out of a match that I was kind of looking forward to. So I want to do it proper justice next week for it. It was in Kurikan. It looked like it was a decent enough crowd between two lads who were absolutely adamant going, I am Noah. Because that's what both of them were saying. I am. It's like, right, you're both kind of right in different ways. Can you just not both be Noah and we all go home? And you don't need to do that. So I'm assuming that they beat the shit out of each other in the way that these two lads like to do, and I'm assuming as well Go Shiozaki's arms are getting slowly fucked up again because that's normally how this cycle of it works. But I'd love to give like some idea. Oh yeah, it was a classic Noah match. Noah's back. I didn't know because there was some Russian bloke talking throughout the fucking entirety of it, and then occasionally I could hear, probably I could hear Russian and then sort of release the Kraken like very lightly in the background. And that kind of like completely threw me out of all of it as those weird ranking points of, he does 10 points for a special move, which again, I shouldn't be thinking things like, how do you get to these? Why do you bother putting these numbers up? Oh, he's an 8 in this, he's a 9 in this, and he's 10 in this. When you watch, do you ever notice that? And I'm like, why do they do that? It seems like a gigantic waste of captions and you don't need to do it. And especially because I don't read Japanese as well. So I'm talking about all other things other than this match. And I'm actually talking about the copy of the match as well, which is probably a bit meta. So I'll shut up at this stage. Make sure we'll fit it in next week when we've probably got a bit more time, but I'll find a better copy of it. So that's Pro Wrestling Noah. Yeah,
good stuff. And I watched SmackDown, and SmackDown was about as notable as Raw. Nothing to talk about there. And very dead week for WWE content. I'm sure they'll put the effort in next week for the Rumble go home. But yeah, that's it really. Maybe we'll check in with Gladiators episode 2 next week. Yeah. I have just double checked on the Patreon, JP. I don't know if you've got it in front of you, but unless you want me to do it as far as what's running the poll right now for our Royal Rumble flashback review.
Oh yeah, got it up on here.
Who's winning? Want to let the people know? Not closing it yet, but we're getting there.
Do you want me to go from top down to bottom? I don't want to be going necessarily into numbers.
Just give us the top ones.
Oh, the top ones. Right. Okay. It's 2-horse race at the minute between Royal Rumble 2007 and Royal Rumble 2001. And then all of the others a little bit behind, but it's early doors in this. So all votes matter.
So like the Channel 4 Rumble, IWC Rumble.
It does. It's it's kind of, I know that's the one you soft spot in your heart for that one as well. The good thing is I barely remember any of these. So I'm like, okay, why not? I'm game for all of them on here. So plenty of time to vote. And if you want to join in, there's been loads of votes in the time that we've been recording on air as well. Bloody hellfire. And this is only in fucking 2.5 hours since we announced the poll coming up. So yeah, that's how it's looking currently. So you're going to go to patreon.com/grapple and then you can join in on that. And just to throw in all the other plugs as well, we have the brilliant King of the Mountain, Chris Platt, his pick, Brock Year One, a brilliant show that you did with yourself, Chris, Gareth, and Matty as well. Like tour de force, brilliant stuff about ages, like classic Brock, as I would like to think of it, like cracking show. So go and listen to that or watch that if you're at youtube.com/@grapple as well. And we've got loads of other brilliant stuff. Like I say, we're going to have that. We'll be announcing the winner of the Royal Rumble poll, by the way, on the weekend show. So we'll have that out there. It's to end 7 o'clock on Friday. So, get those votes in.
So we can close right now. So yeah, every little vote is going to count. But yeah, as JP said, all that stuff on patreon.com/grapple. Like you say, join us on youtube.com/askgrapple. Had a couple of our live YouTube members with us here tonight. So thank you to them for tuning in. But yeah, outside that usual weekend show on Friday and all the other good stuff. But yeah, in the meantime, go forth, folks. Have a great week, and we will catch you again for next week's Spotlight. See you all.
Bye.
Good night.